Oh my god, Brazil's just dead. What?
Dark Knight will get that shot in. He has one more shot. He takes out the Undertaker. Now it is impossible for the E100 to win.
And the Matildas do one better, and it does look like they will be the champions of Season 3. Matildas will take it.
There's the pummel party about to come out.
Yep, and Knight's the first point of focus, and Knight, oh my god, he's just been deleted.
I don't think he can hit the I-7 without the I-7 hitting him yet.
Oh, he can! He's
saying?
actually insane.
Unreasonable shot from Napalmer, but can he get the reload off? Can he survive? Does he know where Dell is? And does Wymo miss? No is the answer.
Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to week 4 of the ANZ World of Tanks Premier League Season 5. My name is Blue Panda. Joining me on the mic, a good friend of mine, a lost child, it's Cthulhu ANZ, and my other co-host is a man who spends more time grounded in fantasy than he does in reality. It's Elfish Guy. Gentlemen, how are we feeling after last week?
Not so good after that introduction, I'll just say, by the way. You're literally not the first person that's done that to me either. That's the problem. Like, you know, I thought... All right, I kind of expect it from Mac and Pilsky, but I thought Blue Panda, who I've never worked with before, was going to be nice to me on our first broadcast together. But you've just thrown me in the dumpster, called Cthulhu your best friend. This is just racism. It's because you guys are both from New Zealand and I'm from Australia. Like, what's going on here? Can we get the Aussies back on this show? This is just not...
It's the takeover. Like, we're putting the NZ in the exclamation mark over the ANZ.
Yeah, look, at this point, we're basically running a Make-A-Wish Foundation charity here, getting the Australians in to help us out. But, I mean, last week there was some ups and downs. We had some rather interesting results. I mean, we got to see a couple of pop-offs, a little bit of here and there. I mean, Elfish, are we starting to see teams find their mark coming into the season?
Yeah, I think so. I think definitely, you know, a great example of that probably is Action X. Like, I felt like last week was really one where we sort of went into that series and thought, you know, they probably don't win this one, but they did, and they walked away with it pretty comfortably, and they did very, very well for themselves. So, sort of doubled down on what they were able to do the week prior and have now put together a couple of really good series. So, again, you know, I think a big test for them today, but I think, yeah, we are now 4 weeks into the season, and we're starting to really get a good idea of which teams are doing well for themselves, which teams may be still struggling a little bit. But, yeah, it's been a pretty good season so far, so I'm happy with where we're at.
Well, let's have a look at how last week played out. Of course, we've done a bit of chatting about it, but on the whole, I mean, you look at it, right side, all pluses so far, 3 1s across the board, Cthulhu. But I mean, there was a lot of talk, a lot of expectations coming into week 3 that may have not panned out the way that the casting lineup thought.
Yeah, look, I mean, the very first matchup, Matildas versus Action X, definitely was the one that quite a lot of people had their eyes on, given the, you know, for Matildas, it's been a bit of a struggle streak. They still yet to iron out all their performances. Plus, with the most recent departure of 2+2 as well, there may be a bit of a shake-up as well within the team to see how maybe that sort of an emergency sub-injection could really work out for them. Then for Comets, look, for Comets, it's been the big chance, or rather, well, not even the big chances. It was just another opportunity to get themselves on board. Unfortunately, yeah, Panthers just proven to be a little bit more flexible in terms of their play. I mean, Bales popped off. And the Sydney Derby, look, yeah, Scorpions, unfortunately for them, the curse sort of continues in the regular season, where they just can't seem to be able to get a win over the Sentinels.
I mean, Cthulhu touched on it there, Jordan, just a little bit, you know, 2+2 stepping away from the competition, hasn't really played anything so far this season, and obviously the introduction of one of our B-League players being Kiwi Dynamite, I mean, it changed this early in the season. Do you reckon that could work against the Matildas, who arguably are in a pretty rough spot at the moment?
Yeah, look, I mean, I feel like this is a bit of a loaded question because it's a really great opportunity to just say some mean things about the Matildas, isn't it? But the reality is I'm not sure whether it, like, I don't think it's a good thing, put it that way, but I also don't know that it's going to hurt them too much because, like, how much further do they really have to fall? I can only hope that it's going to be a positive to their lineup. You know, maybe it adds a player that has some flexibility, or that they, you know, someone needs to take a break here or there. They could sort of just chuck him in and have a crack. But obviously he's got a fair bit of getting up to speed to do to sort of catch back up with the first few weeks and whatever changes they've made since they've been, you know, through from different multiple lineups and such. So yeah, I don't think it's a bad thing necessarily because, I mean, they're already at the bottom of the table, so why not just change things up a little bit and see what happens. But Is it going to elevate them? Is that going to really help them? Is it, a massive pickup? I don't think so necessarily. I don't think it saves their season.
Well, you've already alluded to how things are currently standing coming into week 4. Let's have a look at the standings, of course, and see where they lie. Coming into the matchup, I mean, you've got the North Sydney Sentinel. Oh, my lord, I've just absolutely butchered. It's great being here first week. It is and all. But yeah, North Sydney Sentinels, there you go, are currently in first. But I mean, it's, 4 teams currently sitting with 6 points at the moment. They're joined by the South Sydney Scorpions, Adelaide Action, Perth Panthers. And then you look down towards the bottom of the leaderboard, Cthulhu. Cairns Comets, the newest introductions to this competition. Surprisingly not sitting at the bottom of the leaderboard, having a slightly better time than the team that Jordan was just talking about, the Melbourne Matildas.
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird sort of timeline, because obviously when Comets were first introduced to the to ANZPL, everyone were basically expecting them to have a bit of a rough run, and obviously sitting on 2-pointers whilst the 4 other teams are sitting on 6-pointers is already feeling a little bit rough. But in terms of just how they play, it always looks like they are evolving from sort of almost round to round sort of basis, if not from match to match. And whilst, yes, the initial win over Matildas did give them a really nice sort of boost in terms of the points, the rest of the games, well, one, unfortunately, they had to play in almost like a comical manner where they had to basically 4v5, as unfortunate as it was. And against the Panthers, whilst, look, again, a very valiant attempt has been made, unfortunately, just couldn't really close it all out the right way. So, I mean, from here on out, I think the main sort of idea is that for Comets, they just need to get comfortable in ANZPL, because obviously pacing is a whole lot different comparative to the B-League, and the strats are slightly different. The approach is slightly different. So yeah, as soon as they do adjust for that sort of pacing, I reckon the second half of the regular season could be rather explosive for them. Whereas for Matildas, gosh, there's just way too many at the moment issues, namely at least the sort of a rumored lack of even time/ability to have some of the scrims or even the preparation, which has been sort of alleged sort of core or the root of the problems.
Well, these players, as we head into our fantasy team of the week, are far from the root of the issue. And look, Jordan, you're one who's very vocal about how this is, of course, the most important part of the World of Tanks ANZ Premier League. Run us through what we're seeing here in terms of the fantasy team of the week.
I mean, I think for the most part, you're really just seeing the quote-unquote star players from each respective team having a very, very good performance. I think you could say Whippet, Donga, Bales, Madhouse, and Rainbow all definitely fall into that kind of category. Critical and Twit, I mean, obviously they're 2 pickups with a low star rating that are actually performing very, very impressively. So across the board, I don't think there's too many real surprises. Like even in the cases of Critical and Twit, like I know they're lower star rating players, but we've sort of seen these guys around a lot in ANZPL for the past couple of years, and they've always been very solid players. I think in the case of Crit and Twit in particular, maybe they've not had as much playtime in previous seasons, and that's why they're kind of like lower star rating. And I think they're also, to an extent, maybe a little bit less consistent than some of those 4 or 5 star picks. So that's, again, probably why they've got a little bit of a lower star rating. But yeah, I mean, across the board, these are the guys you want to be seeing perform, and these are the ones that are performing, which is fantastic to see, right? If you're a 5-star pick and you're not in this team of the week, theoretically, you're doing something wrong. So Donga, Whippet, Madhouse, well done. They've upheld their end of the bargain. Quite frankly, I think Bales and Rainbow should be 5-star picks as well. I think it's just silly that they're not, to be honest, but I understand the reasons why. Like, obviously, Bales comes back from a bit of a hiatus, so to speak, and Rainbow has had some games in the previous season where he didn't play, so that's probably why he missed out on it. But yeah, look, I mean, they're very, very phenomenal players in their own right, and so no surprises to see them up the top there as well.
And we do see our updated All-Stars leaderboard, Cthulhu, Critical, and Whippet, unfortunately falling a few places, and Dongalord claiming first spot at the moment. And look, his average fantasy points not looking too shabby.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, Donga had a absolutely stunner start of the season, given that him and the whole team, especially after the last week's performance, looked like a very cohesive sort of unit altogether. It's definitely a well-deserved sort of first place in the All-Stars leaderboard. Plus, I mean, with the fact that sort of we were talking, I mean, each and every host, including yourself as well, have been talking, oh yeah, Donga this, Donga that, and it's always kind of on the mind. So yeah, with him plus, you know, the whole of the Action X roster, they are a very scary entity as of now. With Critical and Whippet, yeah, look, I'm gonna be real. It still sort of feels like a very surprising sort of occurrence because you have two people that are on the All Stars leaderboard, yet Matildas are having so much struggle, and so at this point, sort of kind of a question comes up as to when do we get to see finally that sort of cohesion start coming into the play as well for them.
Well, let's not waste too much more time. We've got more to get through. We've got some tanks to play, of course. Our matches for the day up first in the Perth Panthers taking on the Adelaide Action X in match 1. Cairns Comets versus the North Sydney Sentinels in match 2. And South Sydney Scorpions taking on the Melbourne Matildas in match 3. We won't waste too much time talking about it because we've got that to break it down. So let's get on to our predictions, gentlemen. And look, fantasy might be your playground here, Jordan, but it seems that predictions are certainly mine. It's a humble honor being this high up the ivory tower in terms of the prediction game. But look, let's go to the one disparity that you two gentlemen have. I'll throw it to you first. You're back in Action X here over the Perth Panthers. What makes you lean that way?
Look, I'll be honest. I think for me, what ended up being the big deal breaker is just the sheer fact that right now the momentum for Action X has been going really good. This one will be a really good test to their performance and how will they be able to handle themselves. Obviously, with the fact that they will be versing against quite a renewed, quite a revitalized Panthers roster, this would be a really yet another good test. They already managed to overpower Sentinels in a 3-1 scoreline, despite the fact that Return was mentioning, oh yeah, we kind of quote unquote weren't too fussed about whether it's a win or a loss, but regardless of that, it's still a win is a win. So here is just flip the coin. Well, AX was the one that kind of turned out for me, I suppose.
And Jordan, we obviously know that the reason that you've gone with the Perth Panthers is to be the antithesis of Pilsky. Obviously, you two tied at 5 points. You want to be able to beat him out, of course. But look, we know that this isn't your area of expertise. It's all about the fantasy. So we'll keep chugging along. We've got a match to get into. Let's jump on into it. Of course, the Perth Panthers taking on the Adelaide Action X. I mean, look, Jordan, I'll throw this one to you. Madhouse had some great moments and less than great moments last week.
Yeah, I think for the most part, it was generally pretty good from Madhouse, and I think it was generally pretty good from Panthers last week as well. With that said, there was definitely stuff that they can go back and look at and say, well, that was probably less than ideal, and we can sort of shore things up a little bit, which is, I think, probably a good position to be in. You never want to be having a terrible week, but you never want to be having the perfect week because you always want to have something to improve on. And so for the Panthers, yes, there's definitely a little bit that they can work on, that they can look to sort of improve. And I think this is actually going to be quite a big test for them. I know Cthulhu was saying for Action X, it's going to be a bit of a test. And I kind of think that's mirrored on the side of Panthers as well. I think both of these two teams are at a point in their season now where they've had enough time to integrate the new members. They've had enough time to work together as a roster and sort of get themselves sorted. And they've started to look good. And they've beaten some weaker teams. They've actually taken some matches off of some stronger teams. They've also lost a couple of games here and there, both of them. But are we going to see that be a consistent thing across the season, from either of these two teams? Are they? More so, the question I'm kind of asking is, which of these two teams is actually going to be able to take that next step and sort of do it on a consistent basis? Be that solid team, be that top 3 team, that top 4 team that we're hoping to see. And which of these two teams is going to falter today and drop down the standings a little bit?
There you go. Of course, our player matchups that we're looking at. Madhouse had that pretty wicked clutch-up moment last week, Cthulhu. Do you reckon he has enough in the tank to come into this week and do it again?
Absolutely. I mean, he's been, ever since his introduction to the Panthers, he's been a very consistent sort of player within that roster, being able to dedicate quite a fair bit of damage, quite a fair bit of team play, and certainly he has been a big highlight player ever since his transition from the Bulldogs. On the side of Action X, Val, I mean, he is the person that has been sticking around with that roster for quite a while. He's been the player that has been able to day in, day out, put out the very consistent, also good, solid results, which, I mean, you look at even the accuracy and the penetration rate, all sitting in the higher end of the spectrum. And look, honestly, I mean, with him as one of the core players of Action X, it's always bound to be a very close game.
And looking at our maps for tonight, Ghost Town picked by the Panthers, Prokhorovka picked by Action X, and we go to Tundra if we need the tiebreaker. I mean, Jordan, looking at these maps, this season, Both teams have had a decent amount of success. They're both, 1-1 in terms of win losses with Ghost Town and Prokhorovka. And then going to Tundra, neither team has played it. But you look at the 3 maps last season, this was absolutely Perth Panthers' playground. They loved this trio of maps. It was their best 3, in fact, across the board. How do you think this fares?
Yeah, look, I mean, I've obviously predicted for the Panthers, so I think that this is going to be a pretty good series for them. I'm happy with the map selection that we do have. When it comes to this season in particular, I think it's probably still a little bit too early to say which teams are looking good on each respective map. I mean, it's been a long time since last season. There is a bit to look into there, but obviously some roster changes on both teams makes you wonder where we're going to sit. But here we go into game number 1. And Cthulhu, Ghost Town. I know you were talking a little bit about this this map pool as well, and you were saying you thought this was a bit worrisome for ActionX as well. Seems like you were of the same opinion as Blue Panda.
Yeah, look, I mean, looking at the general sort of stats, at least within the terms of this season, both Ghost Town and Prokhorovka have sort of even stats for both Panthers and ActionX. They only managed to get wins on those 2 maps, only on the defensive sides. So this could be, the time where either one of the teams could have a breakthrough. But honestly, seeing that ActionX picked the Prokhorovka map, that for Panthers from the previous season was one of the better or one of the more successful maps, this what kind of gave me a little bit more of a, a concern, because it feels like both Ghost Town and Proc would lean slightly more towards the Panthers sort of playstyle. But again, I mean, comparing ActionX last season and ActionX this season almost feels like 2 completely separate or different rosters. So suppose we'll have to see how this will actually really work out, given that CJ already got spotted by Bales. And I mean, we've been talking all week yesterday how Bales was good.
All week yesterday. I don't know about all week last week, Cthulhu, but I feel like maybe pretty much the entire time that Bales has been in ANZPL, I at least have been trumpeting about him. Although actually last week I did say he did play badly. Not that he played badly, actually, but he played badly compared to my expectations, which are, by the way, very high for a player like Bales. So if he's not dropping 3-4k damage every game, then he's playing badly as far as I'm concerned. Either way,
fair enough.
In the bat chat, and I like to see that. I think a little bit too much CS63 out of Bales last week. I'm not such a fan of that. Bit more of a fan of the bat chat for him as an individual. And taking a look at the rest of the lineup here for the Panthers, double Super Conk, Madhouse, and Goober. Like to see that. Great tank on Ghost Town. AMX M454 comes back through as well. Seen a fair bit of that last week. And the 277 for JS as well. Nice versatile tank to toss in on Ghost Town. Interested to see what's going to be the setup here, with Madhouse in particular being a little bit isolated there. Obviously, he's waiting to see whether or not anyone's going to push through the field or around the outside of the map and just kind of pummel them in that Super Conqueror. But not really going to be given that opportunity. Bales has been spotted now as well in that bat chat, which is going to give ActionX a little bit more freedom to now move, and they'll slowly but surely make their way toward that 2 flag, where they should be able to get onto relatively unscathed. I don't think anyone's actually going to be able to do any damage to these guys as they drive onto the cap, if they go onto the cap. In fact, they've decided
doesn't
to
even look like
go all the way around. So what are they trying to do? Maybe isolate Bales in that bat chat potentially. If he makes a mistake here, he could really be in a problematic scenario if they go toward the 1 flag. If not, just trying to take the fight to Twit, who's defending 2.
I'll be honest, the lineup that ActionX actually brought out feels more like a sort of a 1 flag push to me, almost, to a certain degree, because I mean, introducing the 2 E100s plus the IS-7 that usually you would see around the A line to be attempting to do some sort of scouting. This definitely feels like almost too intricate of a rotation to move towards the 1 flag, as it seems like that's sort of the staging ground here. But yeah, look, in terms of Bales bringing out the bat chat, I mean, the way how I see it, it's more so kind of context is very much necessary here, because for a map like Siegfried Land, personally, I'm a fan of CS. To be seen there, purely for the fact that it provides a little bit more mobility. You have a little bit more of a consistency sort of in terms of the damage. Whereas for a map like Ghost Town, yeah, bat chat, absolutely, it is going to be a perfect pick, because I mean, you have a whole lot of bushes to really play around in the fields, and you have that potential to go for that burst damage where it's really necessary.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe I'm a little bit biased in this respect, because I've always been more of a bat chat fan than anything else. Like that, when I first started casting water tanks, the bat chat was the best tank in the game. It was the tank that you pretty much saw 5 or 6 of, because there was no tank limits back then. you would see pretty much everyone playing the bat chat. So there's maybe a little bit of an element of bias there, but I just love the clip potential of the bat chat. I think that's just so impactful when it's used right. And when you see a big game from a bat chat player, you just know that that is going to be a great game for that respective team. Either way, we do have a little bit of cap pressure being put on right now by ActionX. Nothing too substantial, but it is going to draw in the rotation from both Madhouse and Bales, who have had to come away from the outskirts. I kind of like what Panthers have done here, though. They've really taken all of that map control and pretty much forced ActionX into only playing the town, which I think ActionX is fine with because they've gone for this very heavy lineup. But you just look at the way Panthers are set up on this defense, and you can see they're sort of encircling ActionX. They have really all the options in the world. It's just going to be a case of, can they execute well, or are they going to drive into multiple crossfires and ActionX going to get to farm them up a little bit? I think a lot of this actually really does just come down to how Panthers take their fights. Whether they win or lose is going to be on their own choice.
Yeah, I mean, with the fact that as well already Val got tagged up quite substantially by 1,000 HP already. In comes the swing from Goober as well. This is the start of a potential collapse where this now draws out quite a fair few of the ActionX players as well. But with Bales already having potential to keep on harassing from behind, plus now Madhouse and Goober going for that double S-Conk action.
This is horrible.
This is really bad for ActionX, but perfect for Panthers actually.
Yeah, exactly. This is horrible for ActionX. I mean, they've bled so much HP. That reset came through for free. Goober was able to drive around that corner, get the reset, and drive out without even taking any damage. And now ActionX is scrambling, looking for options as to what the hell can we do to salvage this scenario. We have to drive forward. We have to now drive into the Panthers crossfire. And ultimately, what this is going to come down to is pretty much just Panthers hitting their shots. Bales is able to get the first pick. That's a 1v1 that he wins against the 50B of Dongalord. Tough to win that one, to be fair, in the 50B, especially because Bales had got some free damage onto him a little bit earlier on in the piece. And when all is said and done, I mean, Panthers, it didn't really feel like they were put under any pressure there at all. Certainly not from the cap. This is going to end up being, I guess, relatively close. Twitch should probably die. But end of the day, I guess right now we're kind of just waiting for Bales to come off the reload, and that's when everything's going to sort of swing back well and truly in the favor of Panthers, if it wasn't already.
Yeah, I mean, knowing as well for ActionX, there's been kind of a big audible sort of point, at least highlighted by CJ a few times I got to chat to him, that is just the general sort of mental that like they can't really allow themselves to get too flustered really on some of those engagements, and I think this is where things could certainly could be very impactful. Yeah, Goober as well getting a nice ammo rack as a finisher will be basically sealing the deal here. But yeah, gotta say, ActionX definitely felt like they almost played themselves really in terms of their initial positioning, where they seem to have, you know, gathered to go for the 2 flag, then decided, oh nah, we want to go 1 flag, but then halfway through going to 1 flag, oh no, we don't. We want to go back to the 2 flag.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I think there was a little bit there as far as they were trying to figure out if they could isolate a tank, but ultimately it didn't really work out for them. I think it would have gone a lot better if they would have just driven onto that 2 flag. Maybe they'd had a better chance there. But either way, 1-0. The scoreline favoring the Panthers.
My God, I mean, gentlemen, what a play. I mean, that was kind of nuts. It looked like ActionX had gotten sort of all the ground that they wanted, and then all of a sudden that reverse Uno card, Goober pushes in, resets everything, and then the collapse came. Like you said, Cthulhu, I think it came down to the fact that ActionX played themselves there.
Yeah, it certainly felt like a little bit of an awkward sort of positioning, awkward timing, and I mean it sort of follows the general sort of trend so far that it's been, albeit with a very small sort of sampling size, where for ActionX, Ghost Town, and Proc, as a matter of fact, been very much defender-sided. Attack has been rather unfortunate so far. So continuing this sort of a trend, at least on the attack, sort of tells the whole story. I mean, you look at the damage output. Whilst yes, according to your standards, Bales really didn't perform as much as you probably would have wanted, Jordan. But at least looking at Goober and Madhouse, things looked rather positive.
And I will say, 100% accuracy, 100% pen rate on the bat chat. That's good. That's 5-star worthy.
Big numbers. But I mean, it looked like for a moment that even ActionX were a little bit confused to the positioning of Panthers. It was a fairly widespread. It was sort of that 1-3-1. You know, Bales and Madhouse deep out on the extents of the maps, looking for information, looking to scout. And then all of a sudden they're like, do we go to the cap? Do we sit on the flag? And they made that call, Speed sitting there almost isolated. And it definitely felt though, Jordan, like there was a window where Action X could have set themselves up for victory.
I think there definitely was a window, absolutely. Before they drove all the way around the cap, as we were sort of watching them drive in, I was thinking, they're just going to send 3 tanks onto the 2 flag. They're going to get in without being damaged at all, basically, and they're going to have triple cap pressure, and it's going to still take a long time, in particular for Madhouse to rotate down. Bale's obviously in a bat chat, should be relatively okay. But instead, what they do is they drive all the way around, they play it very slowly, and then they only put the 1 tank on the cap, and there's 2 minutes for Panthers to play with when you've only got 1 tank on the cap. Of course, Madhouse is going to make it there in time for the fight, you know? Like, he's got 2 minutes to drive across the half the map. He's going to get there, and Bale's, again, you know, he's able to find an isolated fight against the 50B because everyone else had sort of driven off and tried to find some sort of angle to defend that cap from. And I think Doggerlord was just sort of waiting in the wings, waiting at the back, sort of to sort of wait for his moment in that 50B, which is what you're supposed to do. But obviously, when there's a bat chat roaming around behind you, it doesn't really give you too many options. So I think maybe a little bit of an interesting call there from Action X. I'd love to have a chat with them maybe after the game if they do win as to what they thought was going on there for the attack. Because it did kind of feel a little bit non-standard rather than just drive onto the cap and try to win the brawl.
And obviously, Cthulhu, you could almost feel that turning point of Action X realizing that, oh, we've made a mistake here. We kind of need to commit to the fight. And it sort of spiraled out of control from there.
Yeah, the moment Goober swung onto Speed without anyone really kind of watching that sort of position, you could see that sort of the flustered sort of positioning and the flustered play coming out from Action X, where they expected, I guess they expected the aggression from Panthers, but they didn't expect it from that position, I guess.
Well, gentlemen, back at it again. We've got another round of Ghost Town to play. Go, have a bit of fun. Enjoy the action.
I'll have a bit of fun if it's a 2-0 for Panthers, because then I get to start rubbing that in the face of Hulu, who predicted for Action X.
Yeah, true. Oh, look, I mean, yeah. I'll take the loss here. Even like if Panthers are feeling very dominant, I mean, by all means, go for it, because at this point, for me, this rematchup just basically just as a decider as to like where do I gauge the Action X's position in terms of my own sort of rankings.
Yeah. I think the other thing to note, obviously, is Panthers is now moving on to the attack, so traditionally a little bit harder to play the attack, which may potentially be their undoing, right? We could still end up at a 1-1, which would be probably nice, actually. I think this is definitely a matchup that is kind of worthy of a 1-1. It'd be pretty fun to go into Prokhorovka with an even scoreline. We do have to wait and see. It's a 50B this time for Bales rather than a bad chat, so doesn't want to be having quite as much sort of external control, as much sort of field control here. I don't think the Panthers, they're a little more interested in what's happening in the town. You have JS in that AMX M454 just spotting at the K4 position, but aside from that, no real presence outside of the town right now, and kind of just looks like Panthers is hoping that Action X is going to make a little bit of a mistake, drive into them. Doesn't look like that's going to be the case in the end, so we might just have a good old-fashioned 2-flag push here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind a bit of a cheeky 2-flag push, although looking at the positioning, I mean, JS still hanging around by the, by the hill on the K line feels a bit odd. Sort of seems like it's maybe somewhat of an attempt to maybe counter whoever's going to be pushing, say, the 1-2 line. But even then, the rest of the team, yeah, definitely looking to sort of full swing onto the 2-flag, whereas I mean, you look at the Action X, a very, very withdrawn sort of play, expecting almost an aggression towards the 1 flag, but with a lineup like this, I mean,
this is an interesting push.
Surely this screams like 2-flag push.
Yeah, most definitely.
Because I mean, you don't have any blockage either.
Action X having not spotted anything on that side of the map, they pretty much know that this is going to be a push in toward the 2 flag. I'm very interested to see what JS is going to be doing in that AMX M4, and this also is a bit of an interesting choice from Panthers. They do bleed a little bit of HP there on Bales. It's not ideal. He's the 50B player. He's also got a damaged turret, so probably have to keep that repair kit in check, just in case that gets a little faulty again. But yeah, just a 4-man push straight onto that 2 flag. Looks like it's going to be the name of the game. JS now has been spotted. I am going to be honest with you, Cthulhu. I'm scratching my head a little bit as to what the Panthers are trying to do here.
Yeah, it certainly feels rather peculiar with the way what's really happening. Certainly would be quite funny to see that it could have now the possibility of sort of mirroring the stats as it is. That say if Panthers sort of fumble on the general momentum as sort of Action X did just last round. Suppose we'll get a rather convincing sort of 1-1 scoreline. But yeah, it definitely feels rather odd given that how well the defense was prepared. Offense feels almost sort of lost in translation there.
I do like what they've been able to do. They've sort of pushed speed back up a little bit further to the north rather than down in like that E1 kind of position. He's a little bit further northward. So they have been able to take a little bit of map control there. But do still have CJ spotting on this line, not really seeing too much. I'm starting to run down. I mean, there's only 4 minutes left here, which is still a decent amount of time. But when you consider they've literally not done a single tick of damage to Action X at all, it get a little bit awkward. Madhouse now going to set himself up. I mean, Panthers are all over the place. They're just driving back and forth. But this might be a really nice timing if CJ doesn't actually spot this out. Which so far he hasn't. Oh, he's making a big mistake around the corner. Lucky to only eat one shell there. It does get the critical information for Action X that, yeah, maybe this is no longer going to be a 2-flag push. It's starting to look a little bit more like it's a one flag push.
Yeah, surprisingly enough to me, CJ is actually able to dip out for the most of it, but still going to be all out in the open. Now it's down to Trax and Val to actually take on the next bit of heat. Already 950 going into JS.
I'm not liking
Quite
it.
a fair bit of bleed once again. And yeah, look, we might still see Panthers still be able to come out of this, but Val about to get pincered actually from two different directions.
Yeah, Madhouse I think is going to be the difference maker here. If he can manage to get a lot of work done against Val, they've isolated Val away. And he's an IS-4 in a 1v1 against a Super Conqueror. That is never going to go well, particularly when you're down on a lower number of HP. The rest of the Panthers players are going to try to isolate a 4-on-3 as well. They're really just trying to force speed out of this engagement. Bale's around the corner. He's going to dump a full clip into Dongalord in that 50B. Not quite. He got 2 shells down. JS might be the first player to drop here, but Dongalord's run out of bullets. This is not looking very good at all, actually, for Action X. Panthers have pulled a rabbit out the hat. They have somehow isolated so many favorable fights, and I think largely it's just because speed is out of the engagement. Madhouse, though, is having a bit of trouble getting better of Val, so that's going to draw the attention of Bales. He's going to have to work his way back over there on this reload. Trax should be dealt with by JS or by Twit. So Bales now needs to focus in on Val, and he does have a couple of shells available to do that. Still got 2 minutes left.
Surely Val is able to claim Madhouse. No, never mind, not anymore. Yeah, look, we both had some concerns about the Panthers' push, given the initial bleed. But, you know, it seems like all of that has been relatively nullified as, yeah, Ghost Town certainly felt like a much more polished product from Panthers. And I mean, it's sort of going back to my initial concerns on the map picks. Certainly, this is now starting to get even scarier for Action X because Prokhorovka, I'll be honest, I wasn't convinced on their Prokhorovka before. Now, with the way how Ghost Town went, I'm even less convinced about that pick.
Yeah, I'm very impressed with this attacking side from Panthers, actually, in the end. Like, it took them a long time to get to where they were, but the way that they went back and forth around the map and they were pretty much able to run rings around Action X, to me, is very, very impressive. And they've now found themselves a 2-0 lead. So great calls on the attack there from Panthers, and a really, really nice attacking side that they used to sort of just isolate multiple favorable fights. Like, it's very rare that you're going to see pretty much every single fight, like in itself, little skirmishes are actually favorable for the one team. Like, normally there's like one favorable for one team, one favorable for the other team, and it's like this handshake, like who wins their respective favored fight better. In this case, it was like Panthers are just winning both the fights, in theory. And now it's 2-0, so well done.
I mean, patience seems to be the name of the game. I mean, there was a lot of scratching heads at the start of that attack for the Panthers, and then they seemed to sack off the second flag. What a cut up the right-hand side to make that play and force Action X out of position. But I mean, Cthulhu, yeah, you wondered maybe they didn't have a plan, but it seems that they knew exactly what they were doing all along.
Yeah, definitely. Look, I think sort of in the now hindsight, that initial sort of bleed more so just gave them a good sort of indication, a good gauge as to how things could be looking. And I mean, yeah, look, this has been quite a phenomenal ghost town from Panthers, the way how they have executed, the way how they've handled themselves, and the sort of the isolation play, like Jordan highlighted, worked out just flawlessly. Really, I mean, we're talking about isolating Val out of the gunfight. The fact that Speed was isolated because of those sort of side streets being used to kind of box in a number of AX players. It all sort of worked out perfectly.
And I mean, look, Penrith Panthers. No, I keep saying the Penrith Panthers.
Oh,
I've been watching too much footy. The Perth Panthers coming in. I mean, the way that they dismantled that hold, I mean, you could see they had an exact plan of what they wanted to do. I mean, Bales as well, the way he sort of split the difference to make sure that they had that security and executing onto the flag, Jordan. That's got to bring a bit of concern going into the future. I mean, these two teams, we're tied, 6 points apiece, sitting at third and fourth. And that was a pretty significant statement that the Panthers made.
this is a very important match for both of these teams, and it could well be a pretty big match in terms of deciding who goes through in third seed, who goes through in fourth seed, or potentially for one of these two teams if they can actually challenge toward the top. Like I would probably still say I'm expecting both Scorpions and Sentinels to be first and second seed, but a win here pretty much means that you can still challenge for that, whereas a loss, it's kind of like, well, you may be out of the running a little bit. You're sort of now relying on Sentinels or Scorpions or Panthers dropping to a team that you wouldn't really expect them to, like dropping maybe to a Matildas or to a Comets and dropping some points there, something like that. Panthers definitely keeping themselves in the running and looking very, very good in this matchup so far. But with that said, it is only a 2-0, right? So the series is not yet done. We don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. This can still come back to a tiebreaker, and that's exactly what Action X is going to be looking for now. That's pretty much what they need. They need to get those 2 points, or bare minimum, they need to get that one.
Yeah, and like Cthulhu, you looked at the map picks and you expressed a bit of concern coming into this matchup. I mean, obviously going to Proc next with Action X having picked it, you feel a little bit more confident, or after Ghost Town, you're a little bit shaky there on your prediction?
Nah, yeah, look, I'm gonna be honest, Prokhorovka, I'm still very much thinking that after such a performance on Ghost Town, Proc could very much go the way of Panthers, purely for the fact that just ever since even the last season, the sort of Proc has been somewhat of a comfortable sort of ground for Panthers to play. So going into this one, look, it'll take quite a fair bit of, pep talk from CJ to get the mental back into the swing of things, I feel.
And of course, gentlemen, heading to Proc, Action X, they need to mount the comeback, and it all starts here. Take it away.
Oh, let's find out. Are we going to get ourselves a 3-0? And am I going to be a happy chappy at the start of the day predictions-wise? If that happens, like, maybe the first 3 weeks of predictions don't matter, but I actually think it's week 4 where predictions really do start to matter. And Fantasy League, of course, is always still important. Yeah.
Yeah, look, I mean, fair enough. Fantasy and the predictions are all nice. I mean, I'm still feeling relatively comfortable, even if I won't really have particularly too hot of a time on the points this week. But look, it's good to get some learning points. It's good to see where sort of in this what currently is a 4-team tiebreaker. It's good to see where each and one of those teams sort of stand. And so for Panthers so far, I mean, it's been a really, really nice one. I mean, now looking for a contention. Poor Val is going to get bullied here. Yeah. I'm sorry.
I mean, Panthers they've kind of rock, paper, scissors this one pretty nicely. Goober actually does end up taking a pretty significant chunk back. And Lord, I don't know how many shots. Yeah, he's fired 2. He's connected both of them as well. A third in there as well from him onto Goober. Nice little response. 455 roll out of a Super Combo. Not bad. And a 426. Yeah. Oh, this is bad. Okay, look, it was looking okay. It was looking okay for Action X. I kind of liked it initially from Panthers. That initial damage they got onto Val was really good. And then Gongalord salvaged the situation with 3 good shots from that matchup. But then he goes down to 395. And you will take this start every day of the week if you are Panthers. This is fantastic. They have set themselves up for a 3-0.
Very much so, yeah. This is not particularly looking like a very favorable sort of game here from Action X, as unfortunate as it is for my own predictions as well. But look, for what it's worth, look, it's good to see that, in terms of at least the rock, paper, scissors, it's the Panthers that will be usually coming out victorious, it seems. But Man, yeah, definitely got a feel for AX, given that they looked like they were feeling quite hot coming out of last week's match. Albeit that, I mean, comparing Matildas and Panthers at the moment feels like almost day and night sort of comparison. But all things considered, I mean, it's not over yet. Still only by 1,000 HP difference. But even then, with Bales now sitting on CS63 and basically dominating the 1-2 line. They once again being sort of circled into that one spot and then could get basically outflanked.
Yeah, Madhouse is going to sacrifice a little bit of HP there. It's not as if this is unwinnable for Action X by any stretch of the imagination. It's just that when you basically have Dongalord down to a one-shot, his effectiveness is really quite significantly reduced. Whereas, like Madhouse, he's half HP, but he can still play hull down behind this hill and be a bit of a threat to CJ. Goober is definitely under a lot of pressure as well. So maybe you have a couple of tanks, one on either side, that aren't feeling too crash hot about things. Not sure who's getting easy shots into Gloucester. Looks like it's Bales in the CO63.
See it as being an absolute nuisance. I mean, with the flexibility of that tank, the mobility, plus, I mean, the alpha being rather nice and sort of stable, kind of you just keep on pinging shot after shot. It definitely does feel rather nice. The only issue being that, well, whilst yes, the timer is ticking in favor of Action X, the moment that any sort of overmatch comes around, and with Bales sort of starting to drain more and more HP, things could get very problematic for Action X, because now once again they are down even more HP, and now Val gets reset as well. Yeah, like you pointed out,
and that's a reset through from Madhouse as well, which is kind of unpunishable when all of your tanks are focusing on Bales, who is just peeking over the ridge in mid and just dropping, you know, a little bit of damage here and there. Madhouse is pretty free to just peek over the top of the northern side ridge and say, yep, look, I'll get a reset for free. CJ in the IS-7, not an easy angle for him to do damage with if he's not prepared for that peak. And so that works out perfectly for Panthers. They remove any semblance of cap pressure that Action X was building up. And pretty quick smart now, it's looking like Action X are a little bit worse for wear. I mean, they're trying to trade things back, but every time they peek their head over that ridge, there is someone shooting them, and they're very rarely being able to trade evenly, if even positively, which is what they need at this point.
Absolutely, yeah. Look, Action X, this is definitely a rough sort of ground to really play on now, forced out of the cap as well, so that is no longer sort of an option for them, at least in the current standing of things. If they could get the better of Goober somehow and get him out of the equation, things might get a little bit easier, but with Bale still on full HP, Donga hasn't really even bothered to try to even go for that sort of flank play to try to force Bales off the sort of middle ridge line. And with that sort of said, yeah, it's a bit of a troublesome sort of timeline for Action X, given that I would imagine as well Speed at this point is yelling, can we stop bleeding, guys, please? But by this point, yeah, the damage is already all done. Yeah, Madhouse is getting the finishes, and yeah, that's basically just all about cleanup now from Panthers.
Bales is just having the freest game of his life. He has not taken any damage at all, and this is now probably the fifth or sixth time I've seen him pop up over that ridge and get a completely untraded shot. I don't know how much damage he's done on this game, but for the fact that he's not taken a single shell, he'll be very, very happy with himself. Dongalord, 395. Ooh, does survive. He'll actually be able to get another couple of shots out here, which is going to be nice for the fantasy points. A lot of people are Dongalord aficionados, but I am a Panthers aficionado. And I just want to point out that I got a prediction right, all right? So everyone of you who was bullying me about my predictions can suck on D's. That is 3-0 for the Panthers, and they might even get a 4-0.
Look, suck on D's indeed. Unfortunately, it's just Action X that are sucking on their D's right now. They can't seem to hold anything.
They're sucking on the L's, I think.
They just, I mean, honestly, I think Dongalord needs to sort out his kit just a little bit. Obviously, ditch the med kit, get some new pads, because, I mean, it was a great start, and then all of a sudden, he was soaking some damage. He probably needed a change there, Cthulhu, after the second shot landed.
Yeah, definitely felt a little bit of a scare there for him. The moment that amount of damage came in that early for himself, certainly didn't make things any easier for even the decision-making sort of process in there, I would imagine. Plus, yeah, look, Action X on Prokhorovka so far had a very much of a sort of a shaky turnout. Whilst yes, attack on Proc doesn't really provide a whole lot of easy sort of pathways, but even then, the way how Perth Panthers have controlled it all, it just definitely felt like a very, very sort of sturdy ground. And I mean, you look at Madhouse cracking a 5k damage is
155
crispy.
fantasy points is what really draws my eye there. But I didn't pick Madhouse. So, yeah.
You picked Bales, so
did
that's
pick
still
Bales.
101.
Yeah, he's had a good series.
I mean, you look at how things have played out so far, Jordan. It very much has felt like Action X have just sort of default. There's nothing, too deep in the strat book from the seams of things. They've just been playing it as it comes, and you can see it very much there on that round of proc. And I mean, look, they rotated around, they got themselves onto the flag, but it's just constant resets, constant chip damage. The Panthers really have done their homework.
Well, it sort of, to me, kind of feels like the game was won and lost in those initial couple of minutes. That initial trade where Val's driving up into mid and 4 Panthers tanks just peek over and start taking the fight against him. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You see 4 tanks in mid, you go, uh-oh, this is bad unless Action X is prepared for it. They kind of were, they kind of weren't. I don't know what happened for Dongalord, why he got lit. Maybe someone drove over in his direction. I didn't quite catch it, but he really can't be affording to lose that much HP early on in the game. If he goes down to 395, he's basically not a tank anymore for Action X. So that's kind of why you saw him having to play such a passive role up on the hill, and that makes it very difficult for Action X to control the map, because the Batchat is the tank that needs to control the map on Prokhorovka for that squad. You're not going to see it come out of any of the heavy tanks. They're just going to be the guys sitting on the mid ridge, getting some cap pressure, trying to take the easy trades in mid. But you kind of need Dongalord to be around the back, down the southern side of the map, doing something, causing a bit of a problem, putting some pressure on Bales. Otherwise, as we could see, it's just too easy for Panthers to, as you say, get that chip damage, get those resets. And so once you lose any semblance of map control, it's kind of like, well, that's GG. So yeah, I mean, obviously very nicely played from Panthers in the cap situation, but I actually think a lot of it comes down to the initial movements of both those teams, and it was kind of a rock, paper, scissors that the Panthers won.
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely feel the absence there from Donga. I mean, at one point, Panthers had like a 4k health lead because there was just absolutely no contesting. They didn't have the support of their bat chat, and I mean, Cthulhu, that's got to be rough if you're the Action X or fans at the moment, because there was next to nothing you could do about it. Going into the final round, though, I mean, is this time for consolation, do you reckon?
Look, maybe we could see some consolation here from them. I mean, on the defense, this is where they could really show that maybe it's not all thrown out. They can't really allow it to be a 4-0, albeit they already lost all the possibilities for any sort of points for themselves. But I mean, regardless of that, this could still be just at least a decent showcase of what could have happened should they have gone with a 1-1 scoreline back on the on Ghost Town. So look, I mean, the other thing to really worth mentioning is Panthers always kept on going, at least so far on Prokhorovka, with the extra bit of sort of HP, because I mean, you look at the Panthers, they're kicking it off with 1300 HP, Action X starting it off with 1200, which already kind of puts them intrinsically into a little bit of a disadvantage. But I mean, I say that has been straight away discarded purely off the back of that double swing.
A little bit of a taste of their own medicine here, I think, is what Panthers are receiving. Very difficult trades for Panthers to win when they're the ones that are driving up the hill and being peeked down on by Action X, because realistically, like, Action X can see their whole tank and pretty much only see their turrets, so not an easy exchange. And Goober's going to try and go over as well into the next lane, which is going to cost him a lot of HP. Twit as well. Be lucky to get over there with only copying the 1 shot worth of damage. I don't really like this so far from the Panthers. They have bled a lot of HP, and it just feels like Action X is doing exactly what was done to them back to Panthers.
Yeah, but in just slightly even more damage, really, with the fact that Panthers trying to continue their whole, sort of thing, sort of shtick, where they trying to be as mobile as possible. But as it stands, yeah, look, cost them quite a fair bit. Now, a boosted M454 with a CS63 of Bales up at the front line could be an interesting turnout, because the batch out of CJ sooner or later will get spotted, because he needs to join on that gunfight. He needs to start unloading that clip.
Interesting little push over here from the AMX M454s. They do need to make sure they take down Uber, which they have. Good focus fire. Bales is on 19 HP. He'll be down in a second if he
Surely
doesn't
that's
get
a
that
finish.
killing blow onto Val. Bale's able to survive, but Gloucester surely has his mark. No, doesn't look like he does. Big corpse to hide behind for a CS63, and now Bales is just going to get himself another shot in there. This is still potentially losable for Action X if they are not able to clean these tanks up. Good shot from Trax, brings it back to 3-on-3, salvages the scenario somewhat. Madhouse will need to get that shot through, and does. 523 is not a bad roll again in the IS-7. But with the map control that Action X has at the moment, you'd think Panthers are in trouble, but now Trax, one shot. Madhouse is going to drive forward and die.
Okay.
I guess that was
Good
fun
one
while it
too.
lasted, Cthulhu. I thought for a moment there was a chance for Panthers, but it really, in the end, I mean, it's just a little bit too superior of a map control scenario there for Action X, isn't it, right? Speed at the back in the CA63. He's always going to be able to farm a good chunk of damage. And so, look, as we say, a bit of pride restored for Action X, but it does leave you wanting a little more.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of can't help but think what would have happened if this was the Action X that was all, all well organized together on the first map as well, how things would have gone there. But alas, unfortunately, yeah, that's sort of maybe food for thought for the next week when Action X will be playing. But as it is, yeah, look, at least it's not a full 4-0. It's a 3-1 that sort of continues the trend that has been established from last week. It's just 3-1s all across the board here, it seems.
You can see it in the player cams, though. I mean, Action X, they take it, but you can only feel so good about it. It's very much a case of too little, too late by the end of it, Jordan.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think they probably would have come in with a much higher expectations for that series than what we actually ended up getting to see. Like, that was 3 really convincing rounds for Panthers, and then 1 really convincing round for Action X, whereas I reckon what we were kind of hoping for was a lot of tight finishes, a really close game, probably looking for a tiebreaker. Certainly, at least in the case of Action X, they would have felt like they could have brought more to the table today, and unfortunately that's 3 points gone begging. So really nice net positive for the Panthers, and pretty much nothing, walking away empty-handed for Action X.
Oh, Goober, that's a bit of a rough one there, Cthulhu. A big old goose egg there to round out the series. I mean, if nothing else, he still gets the single fantasy point.
Yeah, there's still at least a point that has been gained out of all of that, so I suppose you take it where you can. But yeah, it definitely has been a bit of a turnout in the last round, although at this point Panthers couldn't really care a whole lot, really. I would imagine, given that they already claimed the 3 points, might as well, get some different, some experimental maybe plays in there. But as it is for Action X, it's surprising to me that, going into the last round, they actually ended up performing better with 2 medium tanks than a full, meta, 4 heavies, one scout, whether it's, a meme-worthy T100 LT or a medium. And sort of begs for a question, kind of, are we now starting to see Action X try to apply some more experimental plays, or whether it's just them, just how they feel on the day sort of deal?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that has to be the next question, Jordan, coming into this, seeing that sort of result, and given how the standings were. I mean, yes, they were close in the leaderboard anyway. Would you put this down to the fact that Panthers just played a far superior game and understood their opponents better, or did it feel more like Action X were having an off day?
I sort of feel like maybe a little bit of it does come down to Action X being a little bit indecisive. Like, I'm not sure that the Action X that we saw over the last couple of weeks turned up today. I didn't think it was as convincing from Action X by any stretch of the imagination, but also some very good calls on the behalf of Panthers. So I think it is a bit of column A, bit of column B, a little bit of a, maybe 90%, 85% from Action X, and yeah, good 100% coming in today for Panthers.
Yeah, look, you got to feel for Action X, though, Cthulhu. The fact that, it takes them 3 maps before they finally realize that, actually, hold on, we were 3rd seed coming into this matchup. Why are we dropping the ball the way that we are? But, I mean, we've talked about it across other titles as well. That sort of, result can be a bit of a motivator. So do you reckon in the coming weeks, that could be something that lights a fire under Action X?
Possibly. Look, at least it gives them some more food for thought as to just how they should approach this sort of the next matchups, how they should, play some of these maps. I mean, the Ghost Town and Prokhorovka from the get-go felt like it was a bit of a bit of a disadvantageous sort of set of picks for them. Whereas for Panthers, I mean, they would be very much keen and relaxed. Their next Action X's next matchup is against Comet, so I think this is where we could see some more interesting sort of plays from them. Where I reckon this is where Action X could really find their sort of footing back in, but also at the same time, if Comets do end up winning, I think this could send Action X into a bit of a spiral down into the bin as well.
Yeah, I mean, given Matilda's currently sitting at the bottom of the leaderboard, Jordan, you know, things need to start ramping up for them, but you look at the opposite side of that coin, Action X, a loss like that, you hit the nail on the head. Does there need to be real concern going ahead that they might start losing out to the teams that are lower on the leaderboard than them?
I'd probably not at that point just yet. I think Action X have still looked a slight bit better than Comets and Matilda, so I'd still back them to maintain a top 4 position, which is obviously going to be what's important for them. I think the real context and the real importance out of this series is like what I was saying a little bit earlier. They now are quite far away from being able to contest for a top spot. They're very unlikely to be able to find a first or a second seed if they're unable to beat a team like the Panthers. Now, granted, they do have that win over Sentinels, which is going to help out. There's a little bit of a positive there. But when you're losing to one of the teams that's very closely matched to you on the standings, that's always like a big net positive for this team that wins and a big net negative for you that loses. And by virtue, it's kind of like, you know, quote unquote, double the points. It's not obviously not double the points, but, you know, you're losing points, they're gaining points. It's kind of, really rough situation to be in. So, yeah, not great for Action X, but definitely not the end of the world. It's still only week 4, so.
Well, gentlemen, his name might be Madhouse, but he was anything but here today. Look, I'm going to keep it real. You guys look calm, cool, collected through the first 3 rounds. I mean, you guys seem to have Action X's number. Mad, what was going on today?
Oh, just another day in the office, really. To be honest, the third proc game was pretty scary. I feel like we got away with some pretty bad play there at the start. But the first 2 games, I said before them, I have absolutely no confidence in our Ghost Town ability, and I have slightly more now.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think your Ghost Town actually kind of looked a little bit better than your Prokhorov core, if I'm not going to lie. But that second attack, the second round of Ghost Town, which was your attack, that was a little bit of a weird one to watch, like, because you guys were sort of all over the map. You went north, you went south, you were rotating all over the place. So what was that? Like, I want to know what was like the initial setup and how was that kind of molded into what eventually ended up happening? Like, was that always the plan, or was this something that just got decided on the fly?
Well, we had a plan, and once we pushed the AMX and we spotted the S-Conk overwatching, we realized that plan is now out the window. There's absolutely no way we're pushing into that guy watching all of us. So then we kind of just had to make up something with 4 minutes, and the only thing you can really do on Ghost Town is try to push the 2 flag and just force a brawl and win. And obviously at that point the Super Conk is way out of the fight, so we can count him out at least and then try to win the game 4v5.
That worked out pretty well. But, I mean, going into just overall sort of overview with the map picks, you've mentioned that you personally didn't have a whole lot of faith in the Ghost Town. Given that Prokhorovka was picked by AX, did you guys have any sort of concerns about that? That maybe low-key AX were kind of behind the lines sort of preparing that? Or the moment you saw the proc being picked is like, oh yeah, okay, well, at least we can guarantee ourselves that one?
There wasn't much thought. When they picked proc, AX and procs, it's like, okay, well, they're going to camp. You know, CJ loves using the Manticore. He's used that before, T100. So we're actually pretty surprised we didn't see those light tanks. We were really making strats thinking, okay, they're going to use a light tank here. They're going to play really passive. And so the second game, when we saw the M4s, I even said, I was like, we should not go middle. This is like a mid push for them. And JS was like, yeah, I don't think they'll do it. CJ never plays like that. And so that ended up the way it did. But yeah, I know proc was a mixed bag.
Well, look, an early enough evening there for you, man. So we'll let you go, celebrate, get yourselves ready for the coming weeks, of course, because you got some big matches, I understand, coming up in the weeks ahead. But I mean, gentlemen, that was pretty impressive across the board. Definitely keen to see what more the Panthers can bring in the coming weeks. But I mean, do you think that they can keep this one going, Jordan?
Yeah. Look, I've been on the Panthers hype train since the start of the season, and I have had a bit of a roller coaster of a time up to this point, but I think that was a really solid looking performance. So I'm happy with what I'm getting from them. I think they're going to be able to continue that. I don't know who they're playing against next week. That probably is going to be a factor in my prediction, obviously. But yeah, I think they're sort of rolling along nicely, which is a good positive sign. But still, still quite early days in the season because we do have double round robin here, right? We're not even through the first round robin. So yeah, I mean, it's going well, but there's plenty of time to fall apart.
And I mean, it has to be said, coming into a map that you're not that confident on and playing it the way that they did, surely that boosts the propositions for them in the coming weeks. They can go into things a little bit more confident now, surely.
Oh, very much so. I mean, on the top of the fact that they already have a really nice boost in terms of the points as well, and they can start contesting what now is a possibility of the top 3, top 2. This could certainly start, playing out some really interesting scenarios for the Panthers where they could maybe even start looking into what would be even an expansion of their map pool. I mean, Ghost Town could become a really decent one for them to look into, especially against teams like maybe even Scorpions, really. So, and then on top of that, I mean, going into the second half of the regular season, against Action X, they already seem to have their numbers. So now it's forcing Action X more so to start sort of evolving.
Well, speaking of evolving, we have a second match coming up very, very soon. The trial by fire, it would seem, continues here for the Cairns Comets taking on the North Sydney Sentinels. So when we come back after the break, we jump on into match 2 and see just how well things go for the Cairns boys. We'll be back very, very soon.
Overall, Action X are slightly ahead in terms of this little skirmish, but Matildas are at least being able to trade like for like every single time a tank goes down. They're trading one back correctly. I do wonder though if he's gone a little bit too eager. The fire is a very nice turn of events though for him, and it will help him get the better of at least one. It's a 1-for-1 exchange. It would be a blind shot, would it not? I don't think he can spot Dongalord in that 50. He's inside of the down tree, so a bit of extra camo there. But I mean, you might just blind fire it, and if he hits, he does hit. Hang on a second.
Way.
No. Well, if he should be an IS4 out of the picture pretty early on in the piece. Really nice decisive collapse in there from Action X. One shot, but Dongalord in that 50B will start to clip out into Whip It. That'll be finished off by Iron Guard. And all of a sudden, it starts to look more and more winnable for Action X. They have the tank advantage.
Yeah, this is looking to be a very, very dire situation now as well, being permatracked. Yeah. Problems galore indeed, and
Dongalord in that 50B would really just have to throw the game away. I don't think it's possible to lose it from here for Action X. Damage Matildas look like they've set up very, very nicely. Dongalord in that bat chat, he's still on a very big rotation, so Matildas have got a bit of a window here that if they're able to take down 1 or 2 of these tanks, or at least get them incredibly low before the bat chat comes into play, then we may well see Matildas keep this series alive. So Matildas, as you say, apes together strong. They just drive forward, hold the W key, and that seems to have worked out this time. Didn't work on Siegfried line. Bit of a change up though on Ghost Town, and they've made it work. This though, I'm really not sure. I have no idea what on earth is going on for Joe Toro. Why is he driving forward like this? I could not tell you. That's pretty much the game done and dusted. Action X, they're going to get the resets here and they're going to win. It's 5-on-4. I have no idea what just happened.
Yeah, a bit confusing.
Not really sure what's going on there for Matildas, but unfortunately, I don't think they win this series anymore. I don't think they get this through the tiebreaker, and looks like Action X should get themselves a 3-1.
Just keeps on moving and pushing ahead rather than sticking and staying with them. So it could be just the fact that, Action X has just built this and
got out of there in the nick of time. So either the spider sense was tingling or he's got the info. Atherin definitely has been spotted and he is getting absolutely chunked. So this is looking fantastic for Panthers. Take that, 12 seconds left on the reset. They're going to get it, but it's going to be at the cost of AVP's tank. So again, 3k damage from Dark Knight in the Minotauro is not too shabby, but it's not unfortunately going to be enough to win the game here for Comets. And once they have to push forward for that reset, which is what Uber is doing right now, they're going to have to sacrifice an HP for it. First shot does bounce off the IS-7.
difficult to get through. Twit with an AG shell is able to finally get that reset, and Goober does slide one through as well. It's a bat chat 1-on-1. Bales just goes down by the skin of his teeth, and PP Power wins it out. If Atherin throws his HP away, and if PP Power gives up his position a little bit too early, he needs to kill PP Power here, Madhouse. That's the big factor. He does. Oh, dearie me. Atherin should still be able to clutch it out, though. He's over the top as long as he pens. He missed the shot. Atherin, 57 HP, and Madhouse now has a corpse to play hull down behind. This is so scary for that AMX M454, but Madhouse, he's rushing his shots. Now it's a chance for Atherin, who has to peek his way forward. Doesn't pen, and now it's Madhouse's to lose. Someone hit a shot, please.
Someone come get this man's. Someone get the shot, and Madhouse actually does it at the end. Oh my god.
Just doesn't look like it's working out too well. Dark Knight's taken a bit too much time to get over that hill. Got farmed up a little bit by Madhouse, I suppose. And Mendicant does go down, so Panthers now in the perfect spot to win this game.
Yeah, that's not.
I don't even know. I mean, does Atherin? I think Atherin's played this well. I think, yeah, he's gonna eat a shot going over the tracks. No, he's not even gonna eat a shot going over the tracks, but. Madhouse is definitely looking for him. That had to hit. That had to pen. Madhouse cannot win it anymore. The reload is not going to be there unless he high rolls. If he high rolls for 521, that would be unreal. He does it, 494. Look, you can't be mad. 400 Power is just going to call it and say, look, I'm going to go straight on over. Maybe not a bad choice for the Comets, given that the time is getting low. We always say 2.5 minutes is pretty much when you need to send it on the attack, otherwise you'll run out of time. Twit, though, is making good of it and just surviving for as long as he possibly can. Bales down there in the pip is doing a lot of damage. Ignite onto Madhouse. From Madhouse. PP Power is on 80 HP. Comets, they gave it a crack. Hasn't worked out. It's Panthers' game to lose now. Knight's dead. Knight is gone.
Yeah.
It's just going to be a case of whether or not he can take someone with him or get Rainbow down to a one-shot, or if Scorpions can trade that back. I think they're just a little bit too slow on the rotate here. So decisive was the push from Sentinels that they have pretty much wiped the floor with Scorpions on the outset. Although they may be a little bit late here to help out Dell. How he has not taken more damage than that on the initial entrance, I'm not too sure. Raspberry is set on fire as well. It's just not good at all. And that is pretty much going to be Himmelsdorf done and dusted. If they're going to push like that, they need to be killing Dell a lot faster than they have. And I don't even think they're going to kill Dell. So we might be saying goodbye to Himmelsdorf 2-0, favoring the Sentinels in just a minute. Scorpion's in a pretty good standing. JT is low. He might survive long enough to get one more shot off, which would be awesome. He does. Rowendi is now starting to get focused down, and I mean, JT, he's even still alive. So I think they've just sort of beat Sentinels with pace. I don't think Sentinels was expecting that at all, and it's not a bad shout on the defense, because it does look like that one flag is quite hard to defend. So maybe, well, this is really good from the Scorpions, actually. They've completely isolated Rowendi, and he is definitely going to be done and dusted. It is going to get worse in about 10 seconds time when Rainbow rocks up with a full clip loaded. They need to kill Cindy, and they need to do it now.
Absolutely. So, well, they do, in fact, get the better of Cindy. So now it's all looking much more workable. Only 2 mediums and 8 Minotauro against 2 heavies and a medium as well. Russian already about to load in the clip. This is, oh, never mind. They got deleted rather quickly and very promptly. Perfect focus fire. Raspberry being now one shot. Aussie about to get possibly deleted. Yeah, this is all done and dusted. Scorpions, for a brief moment, they had the window opportunity to push this to tiebreaker, but not anymore.
You gotta be careful of Super Kong here, it counters you.
Iron, just go on the high ground to the left, and you can get the
on
reset.
the rails,
Guys,
go up the rails.
We need to get the reset with I7.
They're gonna go up, they're coming up.
Pushing
Who's killing us all?
This!
Kill Joe.
Just kill him.
I think you just chase him.
Everybody
else hold.
Try to get D-lit.
Come here and kill back.
Bad.
Nice. Get beyond his carcass. Nice.
Nice.
You could even shoot AG if you...
Just let him play. Just let him play, shut up.
Come on, you reload him. He's still starting. Nice, Mad.
Nice well done.
Work.
No way. That's so good, Mad.
Bravo.
I love you, Mad.
Did someone carry?
Well played.
Oh.
Don't spoil. I need to watch this.
Yep.
3,
4,
4, 5,
1, 2,
2,
3, 4, 5,
5.
6. Off reload.
Count.
2,
3,
3,
4,
4,
5,
5.
6. Off reload. 1.
Gotta.
It's gonna send it at him.
Yeah. Unlucky. Dude, I'm not gonna lie. Like, and then drive towards him.
Yeah, don't let him ram. He can't reload twice.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. Don't drive. Drive away from him. Drive away from him. Don't let him ram.
Can't win.
Yeah, exactly. Run. Just drive away. And if he high rolled you there.
Whoa, he almost did.
No way.
Cooked the burrow.
Oh yeah, no, if he pushes up to hit Dell, that's different.
Oh, that was a nutty shot.
Oh, nice shot.
I so
I'm
told
not
you
lit.
who would be Banana.
He can't.
Coming back in lock, stock, and ready to rock. It seems we carry on that trend of the 3-1s over from last week, gentlemen. But I mean, the Comets last week nearly had that moment of success. We got to see the inside look. The math might have been a bit off, but they were very close to causing a little bit of an upset there against Madhouse, Jordan.
They were. I mean, I think there was a couple of instances where some shots did go a little awry on both sides. Actually, it took a little while for that clutch to be converted by Madhouse, but yeah, he got that one done. But then there was also the 1v1 on Prokhorovka that, you know, you even saw them talking about it in their comms there, that if that was a high roll, Madhouse would have won another clutch, but he didn't high roll, so lucky for Comets. Either way, 3-1, yeah, pretty good stuff, and could have been a 4-0, so we'll see. Maybe this game's a 4-0.
We will see indeed, but I mean, because they're coming into this matchup, they escape the bottom of the leaderboard now, do the Comets, going up against last season's champions. That's a pretty tall task, even at the best of the times. Do you reckon this trial by fire is going to be a successful one?
Look, I'm not yet too sure about the success of the said trial, but it's definitely going to be a good sort of learning experience at the very least for Cairns Comets. A roster that does sport a fair few of the players who used to be in the ANZ PL in one shape or the other, with, you know, Dark Knight, Dark Knight just joining, but Mendicant Bias, who was part of, I believe, Season 1, and the roster kind of sort of being molded around sort of the new experience plus some of the veterans like AVP as well stepping into the Comets roster. There's certainly quite a fair bit of knowledge to be gained, but also quite a fair bit of chemistry to be developed. And I think this has been sort of the big talking point about the Comets, where they have the general know-how, but it's the actual, you know, the experience and the knowledge to be, you know, hammered down.
And of course, their opponents, the North Sydney Sentinels. I mean, you got to wonder mentally, is it a little bit concerning here, Jordan? You're coming into this as the freshest roster to the Premier League, going up against not just the champions from last season, but a roster that made 0 changes coming into Season 5. Is that just a little bit, you know, intimidating?
Yeah, probably it is, but I think you also have to look at it from the perspective that Sentinels are not an infallible team. They do sometimes lose their series in the regular season. We saw it already against Action X in the second week of the competition. I mean, spoke to Returned, actually. Funny enough, he's the player I like. We spoke to him, actually, I think after that matchup, or maybe after last week's matchup, and he was sort of saying, yeah, look, sometimes you're feeling it, sometimes you're not. And so maybe Sentinels walks into today not feeling it. Is that just an excuse that they say after the fact to make up for the fact that they have lost, and just they try to say, oh, yeah, it's not a big deal. We weren't really feeling it anyway. Who knows? But the fact of the matter is that this is a team that always makes finals, so I think I'd probably be a little bit more afraid if I was playing against them in playoffs than if I was playing against them in regular season. So I guess, yeah, it's a difficult series. No doubt about that for the Comets, but it's not an unwinnable series. They've been a good team too.
And our other player, obviously from the Cairns Comets, Aspen Zula, coming in. Cthulhu, I mean, we saw him a couple of times in that highlight reel. The player on the precipice of making the clutch play for the Comets, but not quite there. Do you think, with a bit of prep coming into this week, that changes?
Yeah, look, I reckon for Alphen, he's been, with him being kind of the driving force on a number of occasions, or at the very least being sort of the last bastion of hope for Comets on a number of occasions. I think, yeah, the moment sort of Comets do sort of polish their own performance plus, the general sort of call-out, I think we might see them actually thrive in the ANZPL. But until then, it will be more so still as unfortunate as it is, kind of them getting the treatment of still being considered the underdogs until they find that big upset, and from there on, it could be on the up and coming.
Now you saw our Met picks. Cliffs, Himmelsdorf, and Tundra is the decider. Heading into it, gentlemen, we're off to the clips. It's Comets pick. Look, take it away. We'll see if they can overcome this great challenge.
Let's see, indeed. I think, by the way, Cthulhu, if we want to touch quickly on the maps, this is a bad map pool for the Comets. These two maps, Cliff and Himmelsdorf, for me, have always been home ground territory for the Sentinels. I would say these are among the best for this roster. Tundra, maybe not so much, but I would be very scared going into Cliff and Himmels against Sentinels.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Cliff, especially, I reckon, for Sentinels, is a prime time sort of farming ground for them. And I mean, look, for Comets, suppose, whilst yes, their picks didn't particularly allow them to have a good enough time, but
Cindy might be dead.
Cindy might be dead. Cindy, in fact, is dead. Oh my lord. Look, yeah, maybe this is a good time to practice on the best sort of best shape of the opponents, because yeah, what is happening with Sentinels?
Well, I don't know if it's what's happening with Sentinels, more so what's happening with Comets, because they have well and truly counter-stratted that. They had an idea, they had a plan, and they have used it to perfection. Dell is just going to send it in there, try to get himself a trade. He's able to do so, but the reality is, it's not looking good for him. Now he's been set on fire as well. Rainbow is hiding away in that bat chat. He will actually get a reload off a little bit faster than Stife, but it's not going to save the day here for Sentinels. It might just save a little bit of fantasy points for anyone that's picked Rainbow, but this is a game that should definitely be going the way of the Comets. And that is a very nice way to start the series off. Oh, look, return. I mean, he knows this one's done, so.
Yeah, look, I gotta say, I mean, citing, PP Power himself, sort of talking about, the counter-stratting and everything, it seems like this time, yeah, well and truly, they done so. Very much expecting that the Cliff could be coming out here from Sentinels. And you highlighted it actually pretty much on the point that versing against the Sentinels back in sort of in the regular season, yeah, not as spooky, but versing against them in the playoffs, now that could be a completely different beast.
Oh, look, I can only help but notice Power's shirt there. Jesus died for our bins, and it would seem that that's where currently the Sentinels are residing after that. It was a very accelerated round, Jordan. Comets absolutely blew the Sentinels out of the water.
Yeah, I mean, they literally put them in the bin. I think there's no better word for it, to be honest. That though, to me, is like, you have just completely counter-stratted them, and it's like there was literally nothing Sentinels could have done to win that round, except for not go where they did, which, you don't really know not do, because you're not necessarily expecting 4 tanks to be on the 1-2 line. With that said, it's a bit of a risky play for the Comets, because if they set all their tanks up there in that 1-2 line, and Sentinels just go mid, take hill control, take donut control, then you're kind of out of luck. But the fact that Sentinels have just driven straight into them has pretty much given Comets the easiest win of any round of ANZPL this season. I think that was just free. I mean, not only was it just a case where we're like, oh, actually, Cindy might be dead here because there's 2 VZ55s looking at him, or VZ55 and whatever, a bat channel or something. But it's also Wymo dead as well. So it's not even just 1 tank out of the game. It's 2 tanks straight out of the game. And from that point, you just can't win. Like, it's just impossible.
I mean, you look at the numbers, Cthulhu, it speaks for itself. Comets, 4 players with 100% accuracy, 4 players with 100% pen. I think it's safe to say that the Comets were barely pressured there at all. They well and truly were the ones in the driver's seat.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely, yeah. Comets 110% managed to just absolutely perfectly read into all of that. And I mean, the focus fire that came out was just flawless. I mean, you combine the VZ55 clip damage plus Stife's Bat Chat and Dark Knight CS63 and the damage from the M454. Sorry, I had a bit of a short circuit there on the brain, it seems. But yeah, that focus fire was just flawless, really, from Comets. And for Sentinels, they kind of just were left kind of scratching their head and like, well, what do we do here?
Poor Wymo left pants down out in the open. He was just drafting behind Cindy, and Cindy dies almost immediately, and he's sort of stuck trying to maneuver around his fallen teammate, and it really just got worse from there, and Comets pushed that advantage. And I mean, you're talking about a team that is freshly introduced to this competition from the B-League. Shout out to them, starting up again on the 26th as well, so make sure you check that one out. And then Sentinels, who are coming hot off the back of winning last season at that LAN Grand Final, Jordan. I mean, is that enough of a confidence boost that we could see them upset here?
No, it's definitely not. I mean, that's not the kind of game that makes me say that Comets is a better team than Sentinels. You know what I mean? Like, they had a much better initial setup for the way that game played out, and there's no world where Sentinels should win that game. I'll give Comets that. But if we get into the mid round, if we get into the late round, if we get into a clutch scenario, are you going to say that the Comets are going to beat Sentinels there? I don't think so necessarily. It is evident that Comets have done their work and done their research, and you know they are prepared for this game. But are they a better team than Sentinels? No, not yet.
It looked like you had something to say there. You had something on the
He's a
back
Comets fanboy.
No. By no means I'm a fanboy, but in terms of just how they've done, this definitely puts them a little bit higher on the general sort of standing sort of things. Yes, you are correct, Jordan. They're not yet better than Sentinels, but this certainly still puts them a whole lot higher, at least in my eyes, in terms of just where they stand in general sort of terms for NZPL.
Well, look, coincidence or coordinated effort, we'll have to see. Gentlemen, they might just take it back here. We'll have to wait and figure it out.
We shall have to wait indeed. It was very nice from Comets, though, and that's exactly what you want to be seeing on a team's respective map choice. It means they've done a little bit of work here. They've really come into this game, maybe looked at what Sentinels like to do, and got a bit of an idea as to how they need to go about playing their defensive side. What have they got for us on the attack, though, is going to be the next question mark here. Returned, trying to win a little bit of an engagement against PP Power, and does get the better of him with that one. A little cheeky shot does go through. Nice bit of damage early on, but it is effectively being traded back by Comets, getting some work done on the IS-7 of Wymo. Return needs to be a little bit careful. Needs a bit of backup here. It looks like Comets are just going to send it and try and deal with him.
Yep, that definitely is a big send, it seems, but just as Power dies, this actually grants a really good upper hand here for Return, because now, well, Mendicant Bias and Dark Knight can't really play a whole lot more comfortably, because now the donut has actually been taken. Yes, there is a Bat Chat off Stife, but at this point, really, all the damage has been dealt. Dark Knight forced off the hill. Mendicant might just end up getting farmed up by the Return once the position is being revealed, and yeah, from there on out, this is already quite an unfortunate turnout for Comets in round number 2.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to see a little bit more of a slower paced game than what we got initially. Even then, this is still a very fast defensive side by the looks of things from the Sentinels. And, you know, that's why I kind of go into this and I say, look, yeah, it was a great round 1 from Comets, but by the law of averages, Sentinels are going to be a better team over the long term, and we're getting to witness that right here and right now. Comets try something, Sentinels have the forethought or the idea to figure out what they need to do to deal with it, and they have done so effectively. They've got really good flanking routes here, and obviously they've taken down PP Power, and now they're just slowly but surely farming away the rest of the Comets players. Return, picking up a lot of that damage. He's going to get another kill through for the Sentinels, and this is what I love about the Sentinels. I say it every week when I'm watching their games. You see 4 players very low on HP, but neither of them are in a position to die. They're so good at juggling that aggro, keeping those players that are healthy, the ones in the front, players that are weak, the ones at the back. They just juggle that aggro so nicely that you very rarely see them lose players for no reason.
Yeah. I mean, the way how Sentinels as well set themselves up for the second round, where even if there was a similar sort of play from Comets where they would be trying to go for that burst damage, they would still have 2 more tanks joining the donut from coming from the mid. So yeah, at that point it was very much of a kind of Once again, another sort of game of rock, paper, scissors, but this time, yeah, Comet's lost
Oh
it.
no,
So,
they're really
I
going
mean,
to do it to him.
Yeah, they're going to do it to him. They're absolutely going to do it to him at the end of it all. Yeah, there it is. But yeah, look, well done. Nicely organized by Sentinels to make it a 1-1.
Well, Sydney Sentinels might be Lion King fans, I get the feeling. But, I mean, look, it was still a reasonably fast round. Not quite as accelerated as that first one, but the adjustment was there. I suppose, Cthulhu, if nothing else, you take away the fact that Comets were still getting out some decent damage across the board.
Absolutely, yeah. It was still a good amount of damage, and I would imagine that even just for the sort of fantasy league, there's going to be just about enough sort of points there to justify things. But yeah, certainly without getting that convincing 2-0 for Comets, things might get a little bit dire on Himmels. But again, sort of coming out of this with a 1-1 will still need to be basically a 2-0 for the Sentinels to ensure that they are all, nice and clean, getting a 3-pointer and getting themselves all sorted on the leaderboard.
And I mean, Jordan, you were confident that Sentinels were going to take that round. They did, but there was still a decent amount of effort put in from the Comets. Does that raise any prospect that going into Himmelsdorf we might go and break that 3-1 streak and finally get ourselves a decider here?
I would hesitate to say yes, just because I know the strength of Sentinels on Himmelsdorf. Like, it's not a knock against the Comets. I actually think these last couple of weeks, what we've seen from them has improved my opinion of this roster. I put them at a better level than what I had impressions of them coming into this season, but I just don't think that they're going to be up to the level of the Sentinels. I feel like if Sentinels do allow this to go through to a tiebreaker, then that is going to be a big mistake on their behalf.
I mean, that round could have gone very different, but Cthulhu, it was about that whole top of the hill that worked out so much better for the North Sydney Sentinels. It forced Comets in that position where they were somewhat pinched with two players playing around the base of it. I mean, look, that's a pretty powerful position that Comets played into. Do you think maybe that's the inexperience coming through against a team of this caliber?
I think it's, well, I doubt that it will be, the full-on inexperience. I think it's more so just the fact that they sort of decided, oh, well, we already done this sort of strat before. Surely this time Sentinels will be able to outstrat us. So trying to play for a little bit more conventional play, it seems like they just didn't have enough, enough mobility to be able to counter the sort of the cross that the I7s were able to make. There wasn't enough of a pressure from Stife as well, or rather the tank was not enough there to just force the two AMXs out of the donut, and kind of from there on, it just all went kind of downhill. Plus the fact that the original sort of position by PP Power, who was trying to contest against the return, got very heavily countered by the extra addition of the two tanks from the middle. So sort of yes and no that things didn't work out for Comets in terms of their strat, but it also kind of felt like it was just Sentinels said, okay, well, we don't really want to do literally the same thing again, just try to rush, but instead just add a little bit more aggressiveness just in a different part of the map. And yeah, it all worked out quite well. Supported returned. From there on, the rest is history.
I mean, we keep seeing Atherin in these 1 versus X situations, Jordan, the last alive for the Comets. Do you think that maybe it's a case of he's not getting involved enough, or the rest of the team can't play their lives well enough to, sustain the bodies on the board?
I mean, I don't think it's necessarily anything too much that I'd really read into. It wasn't as if he had a huge chunk of HP right at the end there. I don't think that he's like baiting or anything like that. If that's the sort of the insinuation, I think it's really that's just the way the cookies kind of crumbled. Sometimes it is what it is. We'll have to obviously see how that pans out here on Himmelsdorf. Maybe you're right, but no, I don't think there's anything too crazy going on.
Well, look, we'll see if, Cthulhu shilling the Comets is justified here. Going into Himmelsdorf, 2 more rounds, 2 more chances to take us to the decider.
Let's see what we're going to get. Let's see indeed. Can Comets once again continue to surprise me? They've positively surprised me throughout the season so far. But against the Sentinels, don't know if I'd back them. Still, an Object 268v4 from Rainbow is an interesting choice. Don't see that too often.
Yeah, the 268 version 4 could be a rather interesting one, given that it still has quite a fair bit of a mobility, but yeah, given that no actual turret will make things a little bit more problematic. I was very much looking forward to what Dark Knight is doing. So when Minotauro was first released, I had, the big question, because this position where Dark Knight is usually is being played by the IS4s. But can Minotauro really replace that sort of spot, given, you know, the hold down position that it could be playing? But right now, yeah, focusing on where Sentinels are pushing, this has the opportunity to be punished very, very heavily.
Is this just a W button round for Sentinels? Like, is that why they've gone for the 268 V4s? Because they just want to hold W all the way down the 1-2 line? It certainly looks like that's going to be the case. Atherin knows he's in trouble, and he is trying to get out there as quick as he can. Unfortunately for him, it doesn't look like he's going to be able to get out of there alive. Oh, that shot's not connected quite well enough, but I think it's tracked him. Can he get out? No.
Finished.
He's done. So, there you go, Sentinels. They had a bit of a cheeky pocket strat in mind. You always have to wonder what's going on when they pick a 268 V4. Rainbow's just whiffed an absolute blinder, but they've done well. They've already taken one tank out of the game, and well, Comets have to now play without their 50B, which is a really tough tank to lose at the very start of a round.
Yeah, that's a big kicker there. Without the ability to have that sort of burst damage, things would certainly get rather dire there. So maybe we could see some things turn out differently, maybe in the second round for Comets, because yeah, this one, well, it will be very difficult to try to retake with Mendicant already only sitting on 1,000 HP.
Cap pressure as well, something that the Comets do have to be aware of, so inevitably they have to be waiting to see if they can get resets or not. It's not really a big deal. I mean, at this point, it's just an all-out brawl that pretty much Sentinels have a 5-on-4 in. You do have returned up in that 50B, a little isolated away from this fight, but I have to guess the fact that he's on reload, he has been able to get some damage out this game. And the reality is, even if he wasn't there, there's a pretty advantageous HP-looking scenario for the Sentinels. Exception being Rainbow, but if he actually gets this shot through onto Mendicant, then, hey, what does it matter? So,
exactly.
3-on-3, 3-on-4. I mean, Rainbow, I don't think he doesn't even need to do anything anymore. Del, Wymo, and Cindy can win this one on their own.
Yeah. The position that is right now being taken is quite rather nice, although with the Rainbow now being eliminated, things could get ever so slightly spicier, but with Return just farming the damage from the castle, look, make me a little bit jelly that I ended up being the clown and not picking Returned here for the fantasy, but it is what it is, I suppose, L for me, but a big dub for Sentinels so far.
Most definitely. And Comets now have to start thinking about what they can do to tie this series up. I think if they do manage to take a point off Sentinels, that's a big win, as far as I'm concerned. So, you know, let's not get too concerned about things just yet. If Comets can go through on their attack and win, then take us through the tiebreak, I'll be very happy with that. But either way, I'm pretty happy with what I saw from the Sentinels just there. Really solid stuff, and a scoreline now 2-1. Very favourable for the top dogs.
I mean, we see the dichotomy there a little bit. You look at Map 1, Cliffs, it was about Ken's Comets getting the upper hand, the drop, so to speak, on the Sentinels, and that's why things sort of came together. This time round, it was very much the opposite. Sentinels just, you know, all of a sudden hit the W, and they're gunning for Atherin, who unfortunately can't get out of the line of sight and fast enough to get away from danger. So, I mean, again, Sentinels showing what they can do when they're in the driver's seat. Now we head into the, you know, the other side of that coin, which is where it was a little bit more contested. I mean, Cthulhu, do you reckon that your boys have it here, the chance to push us to Tundra?
Maybe we could see a little bit of a Tundra, but with the way how first round at Himmelsdorf sort of turned out, if Comets do proceed to losing out on very impactful tanks like 50Bs in the early stages, I mean, things could get very, very hairy very quickly there for them. Despite the fact that, you know, Stife and Mendicant was still able to output some damage, the rest of the team unfortunately didn't have as much of a successful turnout as they wanted. Quite a fair bit of a control over the map has been established by the Sentinels, and I mean, you've seen the cameras of the Sentinels players. Wymo has the ability to do so, judging by his hat, and look, I mean, it all kind of came together rather nicely.
I mean, Jordan, we were able to see what happens when Sentinels set up the crossfires. I mean, they had the cover from up at the castle. Return was just pumping out damage. You could see 3.4k by the end of that round. Now they head over to the defense, which, I mean, should be a little bit more favorable in terms of getting those setups ready to go that little bit sooner. Do you wonder if maybe, despite the great start from the Comets in that first round, that their dash might be a bit done here in this matchup?
Yes, I think so. I mean, look, I think I probably would have said that even if you would have asked me after round one. I mean, the problem when you win a game like that is it's a little bit cheesy, right? When it works phenomenally. It looks sick. But the reality is that that's not going to work every single time. That might work 1 out of 10 times. So you need to show that you're a team that's going to be able to consistently beat other teams in a more standard game. And obviously we've seen a lot more of that from the Sentinels than we have from the Commons. Even tonight, right? The 2 games that Sentinels won were a little bit more standard. They played out a little bit slower. You know, you sort of obviously saw Sentinels being able to isolate a tank or 2. But it wasn't so much the same kind of fashion that Comets just basically got themselves a free win. So that's why I obviously back Sentinels, and they've also got that massive tenure behind them. So yes, to answer your question, long-winded answer obviously, but I think the answer is very much yes. I do think that Sentinels should win this series 3-1.
You're nothing if not statistic, Jordan. We know that for a fact. You know, such a long-running history in ANZ esports. You've earned the time on the mic, so we'll give you that to speak. But I mean, Cthulhu, you got one chance here. If you're the Comets, you're now heading into your attacking side here on Himmelsdorf. I mean, what are you saying as as one of the players here in the comments? What are you talking? What's the chat like in between these 2 rounds? What do you want them to be bringing here on the attack?
Honestly, I think they will be looking at this and probably thinking, well, let's try to look into trying to attempt to take control of the hill, try to eliminate that extra factor that returned how he was farming up on the hill just prior to it, and see what maybe they could do in a similar sort of fashion. Maybe we could see a little bit more of a together sort of play rather than letting 1 or 2 players sort of branch out and just go for, as Pilsky like to describe it, as the Unga Bunga rush. So yeah, with this could definitely be there could be quite a fair few variations. I mean, by looking at it, the introduction of the IS-4, the 50B that we're already getting to see from the Sentinels, at least, they're looking to sort of establish that control of a 2-3 line. On the side of Comets, yeah, 1 person to go onto the castle, the rest to try to contest the very same position. So sort of almost an attempt at the mirror sort of play, but I suppose this is where I guess the experience / some sort of a newer creativity could really, come into the play here.
Little bit of a change up. That shot's gone into the dirt. The one into the middle of the courtyard there. But a little bit of a change up, obviously, from Comets on their attack compared to what Sentinels had opted for. They've got a little bit more banana control. Sentinels do love setting up and watching that banana or the cross. We saw that in the comms video where JT was trying to cross banana and they got a good shot into him. Something that they've done quite a bit before in the past. PP Power, he's made a mistake. He has eaten a lot of damage. The Sentinels very well drilled, very prepared for Himmelsdorf. They know when they're seeing a 50B on the other side of the coin, there's a pretty good chance it could be up on the hill. So let's keep our guns in that direction until the 50B is spotted. They're rewarded for that patience. Good crosshair placement, really, which is not something that you hear talked about all that much in World of Tanks, but can definitely be a factor.
Oh yeah, very much so. I mean, it's the crosshair placement. You very much nailed it, Jordan. It's definitely a rare sort of occurrence to talk about in terms of tanks, but it's certainly something that in the nick of time definitely helps a whole lot. So very much so. I'm looking forward to see what could Comets really do, because apart from the occasional damage onto the 50B of PP Power, the rest of the team could still be having a rather healthy push. But with Return guarding it through the windows just outside of the 2 flag, things could get rather out of hand pretty quickly.
Well, I have to say, so far, not too bad from the Comets, but I am a little bit worried about the 2 AMX M4 54s, those tanks. We really need a better name for them. Just call them 54s. I don't know.
I mean, I call them M4 54s. I completely ignore the AMX part because that's just you asking for a completely brain lag.
Yeah, indeed. And the problem is, I think they've been a little bit isolated here. It's kind of like a 3-on-2 engagement, but Rainbow's not really in it. So, in a sense, Sentinels might have even put themselves into a numbers disadvantage scenario, as long as those rotations are still coming across. I mean, that Super Conk's going to be very, very late to this engagement. You do still have good cross shots in from Dell, helping to protect Rainbow, and Wymo's doing much the same thing, but you can see one member of the Sentinels roster is being left high and dry, and that is Cindy, and he's going to be taken down pretty quick. Smart PP Power in that 50B around the corner. be able to finish him off in just a second. He has shots left, which I don't think he does anymore. So Dark Knight's going to eat another shell. I saw Dark Knight fire a shell, miss it, and subsequently has taken a little bit more damage, which in a game of Himmelsdorf can be a really big difference maker. Sometimes these really do come down to the wire. Rainbow and Wymo, though, doing a good job.
Yeah, Arthur might be able to sink an extra shot into Wymo, but right now, ultimately, Wymo has the extra potential to just pincer in at least one of those players. Mendican, completely now isolated return, should be able to find the finisher there. So that is now full control of the banana, now re-established. Arthur as well takes quite a hefty amount of damage courtesy of the health, funnily enough, from the one flag, as the farm continues rather nicely. Stife now deciding to go all out, all alone. And yeah, I think this is where we do kind of see that sort of the rookie status of Comets coming into the play against the Sentinels, where with Sentinels, you would see, yes, initial isolation, but then the whole team trying to rendezvous together. This one feels a little bit different. Yes, Dark Knight ultimately tried to come together, but it was all sort of looking less like a team, more as just a 5-stack of solo players, really.
Well, I think, yeah, Jordan, you've been hyping it up. I think it's just that experience, that skill, the disparity between being the newcomers and the old guard champions from last season. Yeah, I think, yeah, Cheese is probably the perfect way to describe that first round. Sentinels hold fast as it, you would imagine with a name like that.
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, the first issue with that series was the map pool. Obviously, that map pool is always going to be really, really strong for Sentinels. And, you're obviously looking at a team that's only just been elevated into the ANZPL coming up from B-League versus the team that has won 3 of the seasons thus far. It's pretty easy for me to sit here and be like, yeah, Sentinels is going to win. Like, it's kind of Captain Obvious. It's not even like Captain Hindsight, really. It's just Captain Obvious at this point, because that is the way that this series should play out. If it doesn't, that's where we start to get excited. But, look, again, I'll say Comets, even though they've lost, have shown a little bit today that is impressive. The expectations for them are significantly lower than for Sentinels, so they don't really have anything to lose coming into this series. Sentinels, on the other hand, if they drop this series, raises some big question marks. But obviously, both teams kind of upholding their end of the bargain, so I'm happy with what we've got at the end of that. And so, I guess are the Sentinels.
Yeah, look, I suppose the series sort of got less and less close as the rounds got deeper, of course, Cthulhu. And unfortunately, you boys couldn't pull it out. They couldn't take us to Tundra. They unfortunately do fall in another 3-1. But I mean, Sentinels, I suppose, if they can take a round like that first one that we saw on Cliffs on the chin and then move on the way that they did, surely that gives them a huge amount of confidence going into the remainder of this double round robin.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. For Sentinels, I think it so far has been a very sort of stable run, where they not really too fussed about things, phasing them here and there. They sort of just, taking it and playing it by the ear. They enjoying their time here and kind of, whilst, yes, obviously, maybe a little bit of ego could come into the play where they're just saying, oh, yes, we are the better team. But that comes with quite a fair bit of, commendation, given that they still seem to be very, very much prepared for each and one of the encounters, each one of the plays. From here on out, look, I think for Sentinels, maybe that loss against Action X kind of spurred them back into the shape. And they sort of tried to play it off as like, oh yeah, no, we just didn't feel like winning kind of thing. But obviously everyone would want to win. So, yeah, look, well done by them. And basically, I'd echo Jordan's sentiment here, is that if Sentinels would have started losing, that's where we would get excited. But for the most of it, it was relatively expected for them to come out victorious here.
I mean, you could sort of, again, set a tipping point for the Comets where things started to go wrong. I mean, you look here, and just in general, Dark Knight getting caught out, and Cindy knows exactly that he can go and push this for a bit of an advantage. And it was maybe, you reckon, Jordan, it felt like the Comets played themselves again here and sort of handed that win to Sentinels? Because there were a couple of opportunities where they might have been able to make a play, but they just overplayed their hand and got caught out.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't know necessarily if it was a world where Comets did anything stupidly wrong or anything like that. I think just the problem is when you're playing against Sentinels and they perceive an advantage that they can take advantage of, they're just going to go. And, you're maybe not expecting that from every other team. You're not prepared for that, or you're not really used to it. You're like, oh yeah, we can send a couple of tanks north. But what you don't realize is Sentinels are now aware that there's 2 tanks north and that they can find an overmatch down on the southern side of the map. And so they just say, yep, we're going to take that and we're going to win it. But you do get punished a lot harder, particularly on Himmelsdorf by Sentinels. than you do other teams. So yeah, I don't think it was anything necessarily bad per se from Comets.
And I mean, look, if nothing else, Cthulhu, the Comets, they do take that one round. They make the gods bleed. But speaking of gods, we've got a man, a myth, a legend from the Sentinels, Wymo, coming in for a bit of a chat here. Apparently, now look, they had you in that first round a little bit. They caught you off guard. What happened between that and the second for you guys to bounce back and really smack them down quite hard?
Yeah, we were actually really hoping they'd pick Cliff because we haven't scrimmed it yet. So it was good to get a scrim in before we go up against the rest of the teams. Our attack didn't work, so back to the drawing board on that one, but the defense was good.
All right, well, talk to me about that first round, and not so much necessarily about that first round, but like, I think if you go back and watch this broadcast, you're going to see me here going, look, that was a bit of a cheesy first round. Like, I wouldn't be too worried about that as the Sentinels. I don't think that necessarily shows us that Comets is a better team than Sentinels. What's the mentality inside the Sentinels camp when you lose a round like that? Are you at all concerned, or do you just go, look, they had a bit of a better scissors, paper, rock setup than us at the outset, at the default setup. Not much we can do there. We'll just move on and be the better team.
Yeah, so we definitely did discuss exactly what they did before we actually went into the game. Once we saw their lineup, it's like, okay, cool. They could do this. They could catch us on the one line. When we saw the CS, it was just, we didn't see anything mid. We decided to commit to it. It was just a bad call on our part. We don't really stick too much to it. It's just a bad round. So we just move on to the next one. Defense anyway.
Now, I mean, you've mentioned that, yeah, Cliff, you guys haven't really gotten yet to fully prepare that. Going into the remainder of those map picks, I mean, given that you had already previously a pretty decent history on Cliff, Himmelsdorf sort of was so far your pretty solid stomping ground. I mean, was there any sort of, concern given that, or maybe that Comets just thought that they were quite confident on some of those map picks? Was there any sort of thoughts about that, or is it just more so focused on your own performance?
We did discuss it before the games, why we would pick Cliff and Himmelsdorf, considering we're traditionally really strong on those maps. We're a little bit confused by it, but going into it, they showed a decent attack. Their defense left a bit, their defense was good, but their attack left a little bit to be desired. And Himmelsdorf, I mean, we knew, even if they set up on the 1-2 line, which they spotted us out really early on our attack. But once we saw that 50B, we knew it was done. Like, there was not much they could do.
Well, look, I mean, I suppose it's all in how you present yourself. It really comes down to the ability at the end of the day. Congratulations. Look, a much-deserved victory for you and the Sentinels, boys. We'll look forward to seeing you in the coming weeks and see if you can keep that train rolling.
Yeah,
gentlemen, it's been great. Thanks so far. It's definitely setting us for an exciting run towards, obviously, things further down the line, but we're not done just yet. We've got more to come. I mean, look, Cthulhu, Comets, fantasy fans, that's got to be a bit rough.
Yeah, look, a rough day just in general, yeah, for Comets and the fans and all the supporters. But I mean, at this point, I've mentioned this before, that big matchup that, as long as it's all still being treated as a good learning experience, because we did see it last week where they, tried to apply certain readjustments from round to round. As long as that's still going, as long as that sort of talk is being continued rather than just, shutting out and going turbo tilt mode, then it's still, to a certain degree, it's a dub for Comets. As long as they keep on evolving, as long as they can keep on learning and possibly, going for those counter strats that PP Power was so proud of previously, then it's all kind of a solid build-up for the second half of the regular season.
And I mean, look, Jordan, I know you had them locked in. I know that you're all about the Sentinels and their fantasy potential, but does that maybe give at least some sort of confidence to the other teams in this competition that if Comets can take a round off the Sentinels, maybe someone else like... we'll go with the Panthers and Action X at the moment rather than the Pretenders. We've still got to see how they play tonight. But do you reckon, those 3rd, 4th seed teams at the moment might have a chance at taking down the the current champion?
Well, I think it's a weird one, isn't it? Because I think there are teams definitely that can beat Sentinels, but they sometimes get in their own heads, and when they go up against Sentinels, they just fall apart. And then there's other teams which you generally don't expect to beat Sentinels that do end up beating them. We've seen it in the past. Like, I remember I think it was in Season 2, Conquerors at that time were the only team that won a game against Sentinels pretty much. And then this season, we've sort of seen Action X get a win over Sentinels. It sort of feels like the losses for Sentinels come at the most unexpected times and not from the teams that you would think they would be losing to. So I'm not really sure how to answer that question, to be honest, without saying I have no idea, but I also think no one else has any idea. It's just sometimes Sentinels diff. Sometimes it's not. So
expert, ladies.
We'll see how the season goes.
Knows
yeah,
fantasy.
that's why they pay me the big
That's all
bucks.
he really cares about. He doesn't care about the results. It's just the fantasy at the end of the day. But,
right.
Gentlemen, we have one more match around the corner. The Melbourne Matildas taking on the South Sydney Scorpions. A battle of top and bottom of the leaderboard. When we come back after the break, we'll see who can walk away with the big points at the end of the day. We'll see you back soon.
The final Battle Pass season of the year will begin very soon. This is your last chance to earn more tokens and spend them on unique tanks. So, it's time to take what you rightfully earned. Season 9 is almost upon us. Get ready for 3 chapters with new 3D styles for 3 excellent Tier 10 vehicles. And for the first time, each style has a built-in camouflage that will appear as you progress. This season, the 3 styles are Bernard for the robust Hussar 60 TP Lewandowski Go, Cesare for the glorious Legionnaire Progetto M40 Mod 65, and Le Vizier for the AMX 13105, a first for a light tank. And to command these impressive vehicles, we have a Polish veteran with a heart of gold, a proud son of Rome who will never abandon his tank, and a former French actress who fell in love with the role of a brave tanker. On top of all that, players can expect tons of other rewards, both with the base pass and improved pass. But before you can get these rewards, you will need to select a chapter. You can switch between chapters whenever you would like. All of your progress will be saved. As usual, you can move through stages faster with an improved pass. The Battle Pass chapters can be completed in most game modes. Points can be earned for battling in Tier 6 to 10 vehicles, or for completing daily missions in any vehicle. Remember that you can earn more points by playing in core vehicles. In addition to chapter progression, you can spend your Battle Pass points in a special section of the in-game store. Available items include commanders and styles from previous seasons. And don't forget to check out our offers for tokens. If you've been saving up all of your tokens this year to buy, say, the Cobra with its terrifying magazine of head shells, you're in luck. Season 9 is the best time to earn the extra tokens you'll need to purchase your long-awaited reward. Once the season ends, your remaining tokens will be converted into bonds. After all, this is the last Battle Pass of the year. Good luck on the road to rewards.
Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We're here ready to rock it, going into the final match of the evening here in week 4. Season 5 of the ANZ Premier League World of Tanks. Gentlemen, look, we're coming in 3-1s already across the board. Jordan, what do you reckon? Likelihood if we finish out the evening the same way?
I would say this should probably be a 3-1 or a 4-0. Yes.
Absolutely. I mean, it's probably one of the quickest, the shortest turns of phrase you've had tonight. Usually you have a little bit more to add, but I mean, look, Cthulhu coming into it, I think it's safe to say that the Matildas probably the unlikeliest story that we've seen so far this season. A lot of expectations coming in that haven't been fulfilled.
Yeah, that's basically the case here for Matildas. Like a lot of expectations were there, given that each one of the players is a very able one, and really on papers it should be one of the the quote unquote the god rosters or the god slayer rosters, but unfortunately for them it's been completely the opposite. Whereas on the side of Scorpions, yeah, look, things are looking pretty all solid, pretty sturdy. Nothing really changed in terms of their lineup once again. So we're back into the the whole talk about one team that has had basically so many seasons to develop their chemistry and push it to a whole new level. Whereas against a team that had just an absolute struggle fest to get any sort of chemistry running.
Yeah, and I mean, there you go on your screen, the South Sydney Scorpions coming into this matchup. Yeah, like Cthulhu alluded to, Jordan, one of the two teams that didn't make a single roster change coming into Season 5. That level of confidence, I would imagine, speaks to how, familiar they feel with each other and how confident they are in their own ability.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, I think for me, Scorpions are... I think they just enjoy playing together, and they generally, I mean, they obviously want to perform well, they want to win and that kind of thing, but I don't know that the results are the primary driving factor behind this roster. I think it is a lot to do with how much they enjoy playing the game as a squad, and that's probably why you're not seeing so many changes. Like, yeah, maybe they could have made changes, maybe they could have picked up some quote-unquote better players.
I'll look at that here.
I don't know what JT's doing on the side there, but I don't want to see it ever again. But yeah, look, I think they do just enjoy being a unit, and as we've seen, that can actually be a valid strategy to go through the seasons and improve with, because they have now come second in the previous season, and that's their best result so far. So we'll see how much better they can go here in Season 5.
I mean, look, Cthulhu, you can't really argue with that level of coordination, that tank handoff between Raspberry and Betty, not to mention Betty's rock solid look that he's got going on. But look, let's turn our attention to their opponents, the so-called Super Squad, the God Killers, as you put it, coming in with their newest edition as well, Kiwi Dynamite. I mean, they haven't quite lived up to that monarchy yet.
Yeah, not at all. Yeah, it's been very much of a bit of a struggle street, and by a bit, quite a fair bit of a struggle street, really, for themselves. Where, look, on paper, I mean, you have players like Critical, you have players like Mary, like even Whippet, who just unfortunately doesn't get to shine here. But yeah, look, it's a roster that has a lot of potential, but there's just them struggling to realize that sort of potential, and it's the lack of the preparation, it seems, that at least has been rumored to be sort of the whole culprit of the issues. Certainly not feeling particularly too good for Matildas. So yeah, going into this one once again, sort of yet another time we ask the question: have they fixed up all the issues that have been plaguing them?
Yeah, I mean, that's the big question that's been following them throughout the season so far. And I mean, Jordan, you're in the situation now. You're in the 4th week of play. You're bottom of the leaderboard. Yes, it is a double round robin format, but at what point do you start to ramp things up? Because you could find yourself trailing for the remainder of the season if you're not careful.
Yeah, most definitely. I think we're at that point now in the season where if Matildas don't really start to get a bit of a wriggle on, then there's really going to be some problems for them a little bit later on down the track. It's all well and good for the first few weeks to struggle a little bit, but once we're in week 4, week 5, getting toward the back stages of the first round robin, you need to be picking up the pace, and so hopefully they're going to be able to do that today. But I think against a team that has a quality outfit such as Scorpions, I think that's going to be a very tough ask. Aussie, very solid player, very consistent player. I love to see him in that roster again. And, well, Mary, he's someone that's been performing quite well for Matildas in the last couple of seasons that he's been playing on this roster, or the Conquerors, whatever you want to call them. So I think he's going to be quite a big factor in their success today.
And I mean, yeah, look, they've really got not much more to lose, I think, at this point. Cthulhu coming into this matchup, you can't get any lower on the leaderboard. But there you go. We have our maps on your screen. Scorpions opting into Moravanka. Himmelsdorf for map 2. Matilda's pick. And once again, Tundra there as that decider. Cthulhu, I mean, look, your Matildas, your bottom of the leaderboard. Are you feeling confident going into these 3?
I think at this point it's less of a talk about the confidence and more about just what do they have to lose really from here on out. So we could be seeing some of the more rather outrageous sort of strats to possibly come around into the play. We could possibly see some interesting sort of swings to now start happening with Himmelsdorf, given Scorpion's so far record on this very map. So whilst Moravanka, I am still very much 50-50 as to who will come out victorious on that one. I'm still very excited to see how could that really work out. As long as Matildas are still putting the effort into trying to still put in some sort of a extra brain work into this, I reckon this could still be a spicy match.
Well, we're going into it, Jordan. Hopefully the Matildas can avoid the duck here.
Hopefully. Well, we'll see whether or not that's going to end up being the case. I think Scorpions is a very, very difficult outfit, but they are one of those teams that sometimes does show a little bit of inconsistency here and there. They can struggle in some matches that I don't really expect them to. Will tonight be any different? I guess we shall wait and see. Very heavy town control already from Scorpions on Muro defense.
Yeah, early control could be a big sign here for Scorpions that they could really establish a really good foothold. But I mean, you have Crit, you have Mary, you have Saxon playing around. Theoretically, Knight could get here just isolated and bursted down, but when Mary taking those kind of shots from, especially from an IS-7, a tank that has such a patrol gun, at least in personal experience, you might be starting to question, like maybe you need to, play for a bit of a fallback. But it seems instead that's on the contrary, a slow approach towards Knight is sort of being the first target to possibly target for elimination here by Matildas.
Yeah, already a little bit of bleed there onto Mary Turnip. It's not the end of the world for Matildas. But I don't really like that they've given this much map control to Scorpions on the defense. I've not watched a huge amount of Muro, obviously, since the changes. We've only really had that 1 or 2 weeks to kind of get a bit of an idea as to what we are expecting. But it does actually kind of feel like on the attack, if you're able to get a lot of that map control up around that one flag, it can be very difficult to find resets. I'll sort of hold my judgment until we get to have a bit more of a chat with some of the players about it. But sort of feels like Matildas maybe haven't really taken a lot of map control here, and that I think might cost them later on down the track.
And the issue being is that whilst, Mary is at the position where he is, being rather casually farmed here by JT, it almost feels like a bit of a missed opportunity here from the Minotauro of Dark as well, that there's not a whole lot of pressure coming out from him. There's not a whole lot of coverage from Saxon as well to try to enable the Minotauro to push up. As well as that, I mean, I'm liking at least that what we're seeing from Critical as well, trying to push up that K line, trying to maybe get out of, or rather force JT out of that sort of comfort zone. But I mean, even then for JT, there's also Napalmer who's ready to provide the cover fire there. So you look at Matilda's slightly for now dysfunctional approach, but they have potential for that, the good team play, the good coverage. You look at Scorpions, they already know almost one step ahead as to what they are doing.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Raspberry might be feeling a little bit awkward down on 1800 HP, but at the end of the day, there isn't really anyone headed in his direction, so he shouldn't really be feeling that pressure too much. JT in the bat chat as well, quite safe in the bushes, waiting for any push to come through the southern side of the map, and now we'll see a little bit of presence on the 2 flag, which I'm always a bit scared about as an attacking side. It feels like a very, very difficult part of the map to push, but they've taken 1 free shot there onto Napalmer, and so it's already mission successful. Obviously, they have to think about the long term as well. How do you go on and win this game from here?
Yeah, because for Matildas, they have to be the attackers. They have to spearhead the push. I mean, there's already, whilst there is presence, on the 2 flag, it is only a lonesome bat chat. And the moment JT decides to go for a bit of a spotting run, or even just a simple pre-fire, that could all be done and dusted. And we're seeing as, Scorpion starting to slowly but surely move their reinforcements towards looking out for that 2 flag. They're preparing for the moment that mistake is going to be made. If such mistake does come around, Whippet to get, well, he could get eliminated rather quickly here. So we'll have to find out if there is going to be any sort of big closure. For what it's worth, though, the other one-on-one that I'm looking out for is Raspberry versus Dark. The i7 versus the Minotaur could be a rather interesting venture to see, because at this point these two are very much isolated away from the rest of the brawl. But at least in case of Raspberry, he has the ability to rendezvous with the rest of the team very quickly.
Well, I'm interested to see what the answer is going to be from Scorpions when they do inevitably have to get that reset.
I mean, 50 seconds, that should be still plenty of time to make that sort of decision, the executive push. I mean, by this time already, I mean, Benny has made that rotation with the AMX. So assuming that he's basically going to be the, the punching bag to try to discover the bat chat, I mean, that's the only thing that I'm imagining here.
There's 2 tanks on that cap now, so it's not just 50 seconds. Now it's down to 10, and this could get a little bit awkward because you can see there is a bunker set up on the cap as well. It's going to be pretty tough to get a shot through onto Whippet, and that's who they need to reset. JT has the info, but he's going to have to sacrifice his tank for that. Really just needs to get this clip down. Somehow he's still alive, still feeling okay. The resets do come through onto Whippet, courtesy of Napalmer. You are seeing Knight under an extreme amount of pressure right now, and he should be getting taken down pretty quick. Smart. It will be an exchange of JT's tank for Saxon. 1-for-1, but Knight will probably drop as well. JT's still alive, though. I mean, I'm not sure how this has actually come to pass, but JT's surviving. It's 4-on-4 still. I do think Matildas are in a good spot right now.
Eesh. Well, you were just about saying that, but the elimination of Critical as well will be rather painful one to deal with. With timer starting to run low, though, Benny being tagged quite low, JT being on one shot. Yeah, this could end up being actually still a very much salvageable situation here. Benny by no means should be allowed to stay around here. Yeah, and Dark off the reload.
Yeah,
surely
should be dead in just a second. Mary Turnip might actually go down here as well if he's not careful. Whippet also coming off the reload in that bat chat. This is so salvageable for the Matildas. They have, of course, come into this one with a 3-on-4, but now it's a 3-on-2. They have that advantage. Dark's going to get 2 more shots into Raspberry before he has to reload, and Whippet from downtown gets that killing blow onto JT. Dark unable to get it through Raspberry. Minute and 14.
Though,
I don't think Raspberry survives here. Whippet's still got 3, which won't be quite enough to finish Raspberry off, but
it's just
pretty much is going to be, especially if Mary Turnip gets this shot through.
Yeah, he in fact does, so that should be a good finisher. But I mean, 56 seconds is still a little bit spooky, a little bit, sweaty here for Matildas. Is that there's a slight chance that this could really, fall apart. But yeah, no, by the end of it all, it's Whippet to finish it all up. So Matildas do actually open up the scoreline rather well. Didn't get too particularly turbo tilted, and the pressure was actually pretty well calculated, all things considered.
I mean, has to be said, though, one of our slower matches this evening there, Jordan. It definitely felt, though, like it was quite heavily contested throughout the entirety of it.
Yeah, definitely did. I mean, I sort of said I thought that actually Scorpions had done a pretty good job of taking a lot of map control early, but the problem arose when they struggled to get that reset on the 2 flag. They had to sacrifice JT for that, and in doing so as well, they have an extra tank on the southern side of the map, which is leaving Knight quite isolated in the town. So there was a couple of instances where Matildas was able to find favorable exchanges, and even though they'd given up a lot of map control early, they were able to still win it out. Again, though, I mean, it's an attacking side win on Muravanka, which, I mean, it sounds weird to say, but I feel like is actually a little bit more the expectation now. I haven't, again, spoken to too many of the teams and players to see how they feel about it, but just from what I'm seeing, it feels like the attack is actually a little bit easier to make work at the moment. So good to see for Matildas, but we'll see what Scorpions can do on their own attacking side as well.
I mean, speaking of bucking expectations, Cthulhu, the Minotauro going pretty hard there for Dark. 4.1k damage across the board. I mean, we've talked about where this new tank fits into things and how a team's going to make it work, and Matilda seems to be the team trying to make it work, and it looked pretty good, I'll be honest.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the Minotauro actually works out just amazingly, really. I mean, with the clip damage being of just about on the average 2.6 k damage, you could do some rather outrageous things really with it. So no, absolutely, the fact that Dark, I will be honest, I was quite skeptical of the initial positioning, but at the end it all worked out pretty well. He was able to kind of close the gap pretty quickly. From there on out, yeah, look, his damage was basically invaluable for the rest of the matchup. And I mean, you look at the whole general spread of the damage throughout the whole of the Matilda's roster, basically everyone managed to pitch in pretty evenly.
Yeah, and I mean, you talk about damage output, but it's the damage soak that I really want to touch on here, Jordan. Mary copping some real punishment, but holding on to help the team make it to victory. I mean, 2.6k damage block throughout that entire round. Matilda's, I mean, look, it was a very, very solid round from them.
Yeah, I mean, pretty unreasonable, actually, that Mary is able to block that much damage, but I guess he is in an M454, so there is that to help him out. But he was one of the guys that survived all the way to the end of the round, and he sort of felt like he was one of the players that actually could go down pretty early on in the piece, and those are the kinds of difference-making individual moments that obviously do end up resulting in a victory for Matilda's. And if you, as an individual, can punch above your weight so dramatically, then yeah, I mean, you're putting numbers on the board, which is really good to see.
Not just that, but you're putting the Scorpions on the back foot. I mean, how close were they to that cap there? Because I mean, it was down to 5 seconds, and they very nearly made it work. And Scorpions had to sack a tank just to try and contest it.
Yeah, look, I definitely felt rather peculiar seeing just how much Scorpions struggled on that sort of play. But I mean, this has been sort of a big question mark for me just in general throughout the whole beginning of the season for Scorpions, that given that with Mines being sacked out of the general map pool, which was one of their key maps to really play on, where do the Scorpions now sit? Because yes, they still are a very solid, a very thorough team, without having that sort of the big map, that you could to a certain degree almost call it even a crutch in the last season. This time, yeah, they still seeming to be having a few frictions here on the new maps and the new changes.
Well, I mean, the truth of the matter is if you're going to swing at one of the kings in the competition, you better make sure they stay down. Matilda's having the chance to do so. Jordan, do you reckon they can?
I think they can. I think they're a much better side than what they have displayed for us so far in the ANZPL, although obviously going up against Scorpions is no easy feat. Yeah, look, I mean, I don't think that there's ever a world where you'd say Matilda's is completely out of it by any stretch of the imagination. Let's see, though, what Scorpions has for us on the attack. Will I continue to reinforce my beliefs that the attacking side of Muro is a little bit better now, or maybe Matilda's can throw us into a bit of a spiral by grabbing a 2-0 on Muro?
2-0 will be a rather big statement here from Matilda's, and I mean, by all means, I'm all up for it. But looking at the lineup actually of just how spread out both of the teams are, Scorpions are once again opting for an even heavier presence in the town, which seems rather curious to me because up until now, the general consensus is one flag or nothing kind of deal, and it's first time it's at least. After the changes in the map, that we get to see teams starting to actually contest the middle and sort of showing whether it's a good or a bad idea. So far, it seems like it doesn't really net as much of the weight as maybe initially they've expected. But I mean, on the side of Matilda's on their attack, it worked out almost flawlessly, really.
Well, nothing too crazy happening at the start of this round. Very default setup. Excuse me, from the Scorpions and from the Matildas. I think this is pretty standard of the Scorpions. We talked a little bit about it last week, where they tend to be one of the teams that plays a little bit slower on their attack. They like to use as much time as possible. But they haven't really taken too much map control. I mean, they've taken Magic Forest, and they do have Knight in the center of the town. They do seem to really value that church. They play it on attack and on defense. But apart from that, I mean, Matildas haven't, like, quote-unquote, lost any territory. Like, all this territory that Scorpions has at the moment is pretty much attackers' territory from the outset anyway.
Yeah. It definitely just feels so far that it's like almost like a staging sort of process here for the Scorpions, where they sort of almost trying to find like the right position, the right push, the right timing even really against Matildas, knowing how quickly Matildas could be thrown with their mental in the bin. The critical, or rather Saxon is about to get a very nasty surprise, and Whippet will need to be the one to assist with that sort of play, because Saxon, yeah, he could be in a whole lot of trouble.
Could be, but he's actually giving as good as he can get at the moment. Benny's down to 958, and if Saxon can even get one more shot through, then Raspberry's going to start to look pretty low as well. I think even now, Saxon might get still yet another shot out.
Good deal, yeah.
Which if he pens it, like, yeah, it's going to be a 1 for 0, but the reality is that Scorpions have sacked a lot of HP to get that pick.
That's a good point, yeah. And with Raspberry now being unable to really flex the HP, we've been talking about how Scorpions do occasionally enjoy, you know, playing for that sort of HP flex here and there. We'll already have 2 players basically out of the game. Meanwhile, for Matildas, whilst yes, they are all concentrated, but I mean, come any sort of group fight, Scorpions will be from the get-go already at quite a leveled disadvantage. And I mean, with Napalm now being pressured by the Minotauro and Whippet's Batchat that is already fully loaded, yeah, that is problems galore.
That's just Napalm dead before even getting to fire a second shot off here. If he's lucky, he gets 2. He is able to back away behind the house, and so that's going to prevent the shot through from Dark. So yes, Napalm will get 2 shots off, but he's pretty much a dead man here. Maybe the third to go through on a Dark, but he doesn't even end up firing that. So Matildas have responded in kind and then gone one better, actually, to be honest.
Yeah, that so far, that play has actually worked out almost flawlessly here. Critical gets to hold on to his position pretty well. JT might just be able to unload a clip to get himself rolling. Misses one of the shots. Can he connect the second one? Can't even connect the second one. Can't even get the tracking damage. So instead decides to go for the chip damage. And at this point, yeah, with night falling, yeah, not much can be said. Finally, crit does fall at the end of the day. But I mean, yeah, when you have this much of a health disadvantage, what can you do?
Not a whole lot. Penny, Raspberry, JT, all down to very close to a 1-shot or a 1-shot. Raspberry's going to be a 2-shot, let's be real. But aside from that, I mean, it doesn't really matter here. This is going to be another very easy win for Matildas. And yeah, I mean, it chimes into what Blue Panda was asking. Like, can Matildas do it? Yeah, absolutely, they can. And they're looking much better today than what they have in previous weeks. That's a really positive sign as we head into now our second map. But 2-0 for Matildas, and Scorpions on the precipice of getting dropped back into the middle of the pack.
Poor Raspberry, 2 rounds in a row, and it's just the Matildas coming for his wallet. Nothing he can do but run, but I mean, look, it has to be said again, Dark, his impact so far in these 2 rounds we've seen on that Minotauro is just insane, Cthulhu. He's pumping out the numbers. He may not be getting the elims, but he's setting his team up for some big kills.
Absolutely, yeah. Him being kind of the spearhead for quite a fair few of those attacks and pushes so far actually worked out pretty well, especially that second round was just a prime example for that, really. But, yeah, look, not too sure whether it's, you know, Scorpions just having a bad day or if it's Matilda's just finally out of the gutter. Who knows in sort of those terms. But, yeah, as it stands, a 2-0 on Moravanka, that is a really clean, really good start for Matildas that at least ensures at this point that they will get 1 point should they be taken to the tiebreaker.
And yeah, look, I mean, the possibilities are endless. Muro going the way entirely of the Matildas there, Jordan. I mean, this god killer squad that has been talked about who have underperformed until now. Are we, do you reckon, finally starting to see that, you know, that sort of gravitas that has been given them come to form?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think there definitely is an element of Matildas on the improve. They are looking better, but what I think is important to remember as well is in this series, we're not seeing Russian, we're not seeing Aussie on the side of the Scorpions. Those are 2 very important players in the Scorpions puzzle, in my opinion. So I'm going to take it with a grain of salt. Like, I want to wait and see whether or not we're going to get a little bit of a roster shakeup as we head into the second half of this series, or if this is the team that Scorpions is going to run today. But if this is the team that Scorpions runs today and Matildas wins this series, I think there's always still going to be a little bit of an asterisk. There's going to be that caveat that 2 of the really strong Scorpions members were not in the game today. So, yes, Matildas is playing well. They're looking good, but it's not the A team for the Scorpions at the moment.
I mean, Cthulhu, look, grain of salt aside, I want to talk about the Battle of the Bat Chats. You look at it. There was so much support that Whippet was given Saxon there. Whilst, I mean, look, let's be honest, Saxon was at a hell of a spot. Stuck between a rock and a hard place, but the fact that he had support, dished out a bunch of damage, was able to contribute his own, and then the fact that Whippet still got out while JT was trying to maneuver and deal with him, I mean, that level of coordination, it made it look quite crisp.
Absolutely. Yeah, it certainly looks like a little bit more prep has been put in there by Matilda's. Maybe this time, you know, the rumored lack of preparation, lack of scrims, certainly has been, you know, taken away this time from Matilda's, and they finally, you know, got to get the actual prep and the work in. But yeah, as it stands, Jordan does make a pretty good point. Not a full strength Scorpion squad. Biggs were questioning what would have been the actual, you know, scoreline going into, you know, the full strength of Scorpions against Matilda's here.
I mean, unfortunately, it's one of those things we won't get to see until later on in the season when that rematch does come about. But I mean, as much as that is a question, you can't really take away from the coordination that we are seeing out of the Matildas. They are looking good and in a form that we haven't seen from them so far this season, John.
Yes, indeed. And I guess the question is going to be whether or not they can actually manage to maintain that over the course of a whole series. Like, we have actually seen flashes of some pretty good rounds from Matildas, but it's just been the whole series that has kind of let them down over the course of a couple of weeks. So let's not get too far ahead of ourselves just yet. I want to see them convert this final map, and then I'm starting getting excited. You know what I mean?
Well, look, the Scorpions, they need to halt the march here if they want to get back into the series. The Matildas, I mean, one round away from tasting success. Take it away, lad.
Let's see. Can they do it, Cthulhu? That's going to be the big one. If they do get this over the line, take some points away from Scorpions. Not only does that mean Scorpions are now dropping out of the top couple of spots, but it also puts Matildas back in the conversation. No Aussie, no Russian still. So for Scorpions, it looks like this is going to be the roster we'll get to see all night long. Whippet in his matchup has given up a lot of HP, though. That's not a great start.
Yeah, look, not ideal result here. Whippet. We've sort of seen similar sort of turnout for poor CJ back in the very first matchup, where just quite a lot of damage been dished out. Oh, pardon me, not CJ, Donga back on the Prokhorovka against the Panthers. But as it stands, once again, the Minotauro makes the appearance on the G3 position, which before has been that sort of the claimed position by usually an IS4, but not anymore, it seems. And a very sort of even, a very standardized almost split of the map between the two rosters, as a little bit of a control over the hill. But even then, given that Whippet is not really playing in a 50B, instead it's a bat chat, can't really get that proactive.
Yeah, Benny really not in a very fun position at the moment if he's going to continue to bleed HP. IS4 of Saxon unable to pen that shot. Looks like he's just going to keep giving it a crack, though.
I mean, might as well, with occasional, you know, shining through sort of the success of RNG. There is still that pixel position that you could really, you know, pen on the top of the Minotauro's cupola, so there's definitely opportunity there. But it seems like for the time being, that has been most of it abandoned. Interestingly enough, Saxon has been spotted for the most time of his rotation towards the castle, so that should be indicated in full and in thorough amount, which now begs for a question: how will Scorpions really react to all of this? Because at the moment, as it stands, it's only a lone 50B currently defending the second flag, but there is also the IS4 and the M454 on the standby, relatively close by. But even then, returning the Minotauro, returning the second M454 back to the second flag's position could take quite a while, and that should provide a good foothold for Matildas to really establish that initial sort of momentum.
Very patient angle being held here by JT. And he certainly is going to have a bit of a crack soon. Orders will be making their way downhill. As of yet, though, unspotted. But it seems as though Scorpions have a bit of their spider sense tingling. You can see the M454s starting to work their way up north. They're preparing for a two-flag defense.
Yeah, so far it's definitely seems like Matildas are sort of returning back to the OG sort of strats of theirs, where it's just full send. So it looks like it is actually posing to be that sort of wall against the wall here now, as the triple sort of setup from Knight Raspberry and drumroll JT going to try to take on the 5 stack of Matildas.
I mean, if they just get shots on the cross here, it's going to be really good. That's exactly what you want. And Critical has just got flying straight into the wall as well. JT, though, I mean, he eats a bunch on the trade. So even though it's a decent start for Scorpions, it's a little bit of an explosive beginning to the round. It doesn't end up actually being all that favorable because they allow that trade to come back through. And Matildas are starting to take some control down toward the 2 flag. If they do go around the corner, though, Scorpions once again set up, waiting for them. And Critical, I mean, he's really just being left to dry at the moment, isn't he? He's been that one that they're sending out first, saying, look, you need to eat all these shells. And he has. He's down at 920 HP. What is Matilda's going to do about it? Saxon leading the charge around the corner. Does get tracked, and that's going to mean Critical can't find it easily around the corner either. Shot's starting to go through onto Raspberry. This is going to be an all-out brawl, Cthulhu. All 5 tanks in one spot on the map. It's just down to focus fire and who has guns in the game.
That's exactly the case here, Jordan. Matilda's still lacking quite a fair amount of HP, but the trades are coming out rather well. Knight actually been eliminated as well. JT very low on HP, and Whippet finds the finisher. That is a perfect turnout, but now, with Saxon being only 1000 HP, about to be focused by 3 tanks. Benny in the Minotauro, though, not really having as impactful of a turnout as one would have wanted, and 3 1v1s currently are erupting between the Scorpions and the Matilda's players.
Yeah, and actually, to be honest, the Scorpions are kind of winning those 1v1s. The issue is that they don't have the numbers advantage, and Whippet there in the bat chat is going to be the insurance fund for, even though the 1v1's kind of going against Matildas, they still have a little bit of an HP advantage. They have an extra gun in the game. Yeah, Whippet is going to have to back off here, and does get put back into the 2-on-2, but I think Whippet just wins this in the 2-on-1, even if Dark... Well, I would like to see Dark get one more shot in here, but he doesn't. So, yeah, I guess maybe it is kind of hanging on the balance. It just depends on how quickly Whippet can get in there and clip out. And I actually almost want to say, I think a lot of this comes down to if Whippet bounces a shot or not, then that would allow enough time for Raspberry and Napalm to get their reloads off and clip.
At this point, you kind of just help but wonder, well...
It's hard. It's very hard.
Full-on head-on approach seems to be borderline suicidal. But there's the full send.
They've missed a shot though. They've missed a shot, and they've really given him a chance. He's also missed a shot. This is choke pressure territory for both teams. Doesn't want to low roll here at all, and will not. But now he can still survive against Napalmer, and as long as he pens his shots, he should win 375 HP. It bounces. It bounces. He's got to run. He won't survive, and he's not going to be very pleased with that one at all. Scorpions, they're alive in this series.
Oh my god.
That HP.
Napalmer can't believe it. You just see the look on his face. And I mean, we've talked about how this has been a slightly slower matchup. It's been that much closer. You could not get any closer with the matches we've seen so far tonight, gentlemen. And I mean, what a way to end it. You whip it was that close. Securing their first win of the season, Jordan, and unfortunately, the RNG gods, they are just not on his side.
Yeah, look, I mean, yeah, there's a little bit of an element of that, but he has 5 shots to work with. He's only able to pen 3. He needed to pen 4. So he kind of has that extra little bit of leeway with one being able to not go through. He missed one, didn't pen another. And I know it sounds harsh, but end of the day, these are sometimes the kinds of things that you need to 100% to win games like this, right? If you're playing against one of the top teams in the league, which Scorpions is at the moment, they're sitting at the top of the table coming into this week. When you get that opportunity, you need to convert it.
Oh boy, I mean, you look at the damage that Napalm are having a pretty solid map, or solid round on Hippelsdorf Cthulhu. Now, as we go into the switch, one more chance for the Matildas to lock it out and deny the decider. I mean, the Scorpions, after a round like that, you'd have to think that we are likely going to Tundra.
Yeah, it feels like it, really. I mean, given the outcome that things kind of, how close things gotten, and it did end up resulting in Matilda still being at just a numbers disadvantage by the end of it all, forcing Whippet to kind of clutch up. It definitely puts quite a whole lot of things into perspective. Now, the one thing I'm curious, so we've already seen, Matilda's being the absolute Minotaur enjoyers. I'm gonna be honest, I am somewhat surprised that we didn't get to see the Minotaur from them here, purely for the fact that, I mean, the clip damage and the sort of hold down position that could be provided by it could have been actually beneficial. You know, you push it as like the, you know, the spearhead of the push off the back of that hill, you get that initial spot. Good luck to either one of those 3 tanks that were initially holding the angle to pen the Minotaur's turret.
I mean, Jordan, would you think that was the difference maker? Obviously, Benny running it this time here on Himmelsdorf. Do you reckon if Dark had stuck with it for a second map, that it could have been a Matilda's win here?
I mean, I actually almost feel as though the Minotaur is probably not ideal in this scenario. Like, when you have the Brawl, you kind of want to have single-shot tanks because you just have a little bit more of a consistent damage output, whereas, you know, obviously when you've got auto-loaders, it's kind of like, yeah, if we don't kill a tank, then feeling a little bit awkward about that. I think the 1-1 split between the Batchat and the Minotaur was probably ideal for both these teams. I don't think I would have wanted to see a second autoloader on the side of the Matildas. Like, maybe you could make the argument for a Minotaur over the Batchat, just to have that little bit of an extra brawling power, but end of the day, I think the lineups were fine. I don't really put it down to that so much, but jeez. Just
I think the only person happy there was Knight.
Yeah.
But I mean, look, Cthulhu, they barely scraped through. We've got one more round here on Himmelsdorf. Scorpions, they want this to take it to Tundra. You've got Matildas also hunting for their first win. With what you've seen so far, who do you bet to take them?
Honestly, that's a difficult question because I get a small inkling that we are going to actually see the Tundra coming out of this one. Purely for the fact that Himmels just feels like a very sort of good, very stable ground here for Scorpions to just keep on outing Matildas in every shape and form. Whereas for Matildas, they had a good streak of good sort of rounds back on Muro, and Himmels just blank out completely.
Well, it could be make or break for both these teams. If Scorpions win it, we go to Tundra. If the Matildas win it, well, look, they take the series for themselves. Jordan, Cthulhu, take it away.
Well, let's see. Cthulhu, do we go to a tiebreaker? For the first time in quite a while. Or does Matildas clean it up right here? And now very heavy lineup for Matildas on the defense.
I mean, I almost was hoping for a heavy lineup here, really, from Matildas, because the way how they've played their sort of semi-heavy lineup, it just felt underwhelming, really.
Ooh,
at least to me. Ooh, nice shot.
Some good early damage from Critical. Turnip's not going to get the chance to fire a shot off as well, but this is aggressive. For Matildas on the defense, they have all been spotted, though. And Scorpions can definitely react accordingly.
I mean, Knight is already setting up a really nice crossfire here. This could be an absolute death corner here for Matildas if they don't realize the sheer amount of just damage potential. I mean, look at this, 1,000 damage already sinking into Critical as well. He's basically on death's door, all just for the sake of just crossing that corner, and that is a lot of punishment that has been dished out.
Yeah, I don't know about this one from Matildas, to be honest. They've really just walked into the crossfire. They, though, are trying to secure the overmatch onto JT and Knight. They've pretty much given up Critical for dead. Super Conqueror of Whippet around the back is just going to be able to pump a lot of damage down. They just need to make sure they get rid of Knight. Next tank to go down has to be Knight. And then, meanwhile, actually, I think Whippet, with that Super Conqueror, could actually be able to clean this one up. This is going to, again, be very, very close. It's dragged on a little bit too long now, though, for Matildas, and the fact that they haven't gotten rid of Knight has kind of meant that, unfortunately, they don't really have the guns in the game to win this one anymore, and Scorpions have done enough to secure it by the looks of things. Dark is still full HP, but this is good focus fire from Scorpions. They know to take that Super Conqueror out of the picture as quickly as they can, and so that's pretty much game over for Matildas. An interesting strategy, I'll give them that. Not sure it's one we're going to be seeing brought back again, though. 2v1 though for Dark. I mean, it's not unwinnable. Let's just put that out there. He's on the defense, and it's actually kind of hard for them to fight uphill here because there's so many corpses they have to get through. Dark can kind of hold down a little bit, and dare I say it, play the timer. 5 minutes.
That would be quite funny if that ends up being the case here, really, Jordan. Because look, I mean, I was just about to say that just as I was, starting to praise, oh yeah, Matilda's looking good,
How do
the
they
big
go
brain
through?
strats. They don't. They just ignore him. Go to the 1 flag. Go to the 2 flag. They are struggling to clear out the rubble. What is Dark gonna do?
I mean, he's gonna have to try to find a reset eventually. I mean, this is super, super hard to win, but I just want to say, I don't think it's unwinnable. Like, it would take a few mistakes from Scorpions, but Dark's a very experienced player. He's someone that we've seen in the heavy tanks a lot in previous teams as well, in Brisbane Bulldogs. You know, he used to be the IS-7 player a lot of the time. So, not a stretch to imagine that in an IS-4 he'll be feeling pretty comfortable.
I like you can see the genuine sort of thinking process. From Scorpions, they just realize, okay, well, he's stuck behind that rubble. He will have to go for quite a big hook to even just try to catch up to them. And Dark thinking, oh, they probably just backed off just to try to get the crossfire going. And decided to wrap around for even further ones. So now, basically, he needs to beeline through the straight middle of the park to even be able to reach it in time. And then we'll have to nail basically a perfect time or a perfect shot. Otherwise, well, just no time.
Is he even going to make it? Yeah, he should. They're not looking in the right direction, though. They expect him to come from the hill. So, I mean, it's still so long, though. That's the problem. There's 3 minutes. Like, if there was 1 minute on the clock, I might give it to him if he got the reset. But in theory, if he gets the reset, if he gets there in time, which may not even end up happening. I don't know that it does.
Yeah, that's not happening. I'm not a believer on this one, Jordan. I'll be honest.
Anyway, so
yeah,
just hoping that they're on the corner, but they're not.
Thundra! Da, 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 da. Oh boy!
Don't sound so excited, Cthulhu. I mean, look, the Scorpions aren't all that ecstatic about going to the decider, and I think that's understandable in the situation they find themselves in. It doesn't feel like it's been the cleanest of runs, Jordan. They, I mean, what, for the first time, like you said, in a while, we're going to a decider map.
Yeah, we are. I mean, we didn't get one at all last week. I don't know about the week prior because I don't think I was here for that one. But yeah, either way, I mean, haven't seen a tiebreaker in a while. We used to last season go to tiebreakers pretty much on the reg. Like every game was a 2-2. It was the meme, ANZ PL, let's 2-2. But I haven't really had that. I think, I don't know, in a way, if I'm Scorpions here, I'm a bit disappointed because I think they're a team that probably would want 3 points out of this matchup. But the fact that they were down 0-2, they're also playing without Aussie and Russian. To bring it back to the tiebreak is like not a terrible result. So overall, probably still a little bit disappointing because Matildas is bottom of the table. So you don't really want to be dropping points to Matildas. But
yeah,
you know, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. So hopefully they can do something good in this tiebreaker.
I mean, you gotta feel for the man though, Cthulhu. Dark. It looked like it was going to be that spectacular comeback story. But then unfortunately realized that there is absolutely no way down that hill because the bodies that are just all around, no way through, and he's a little bit too cautious trying to rotate over to the hill, and the fact that it came out of the clock, and maybe if he'd been a little bit more aggressive and maybe a little bit more proactive, it could have been a different story, but the fact that, you know, he wasn't certain and that's what cost them the round has to hurt a little.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There would be quite a fair bit of, you know, I would imagine quite a fair bit of thinking about that and as to what could have happened, what could have been done. But yeah, in reality, it is what it is. Look, there's an absolute understanding that there could have been a big crossfire, that it could have been a fake out, but it's like we've been, you know, talking about this basically throughout the whole this week's broadcast, that it's like, you know, sometimes it just ends up being that sort of an elaborate game of rock, paper, scissors, really, in terms of just trying to predict just what happens, what is going to happen. So from here on out, you know, going into Tundra, I definitely don't know what to make of it really, because on one hand, Matildas that had a pretty stellar, you know, Muravanka absolutely flopped like wet bag of noodles on Himmelsdorf, whereas you look at Scorpions, completely 180, but now they're feeling like they are on a high. The comeback train is real, and like Jordan highlighted, you know, it's time for them to regain those points.
Oh, I mean, I think it's probably safe to say after watching how the start of that round played out that the Matildas had really no right to find themselves in the position they did, because they got caught out multiple different angles by the Scorpions. They were literally just sitting there sprinting, trying to outmatch these tanks up on the hill and taking free damage, but the fact that they were able to turn it back to the point that they did was rather impressive.
Yeah, look, I mean, end of the day, the fact that this entire series is as close as it is kind of impressive to me. I think this is pretty funny though. This traffic jam, like,
Yeah.
how does this even happen, right? How are we fighting here on Himmelsdorf at 2 minutes into the round? Like, that's just Matilda's all over, isn't it? They've just decided, look, we're going to send it. And it might work. It might not work. It might work. So let's see what happens, I guess.
I mean, the crazy thing being that, unfortunately, you look at it, Whippet, kind of the MVP for Scorpions there. The fact that he died where he did, Cthulhu, was what sort of spelt disaster for the roster because there was no way back down there. You saw Dark trying to figure out where to go. And, I mean, you got to hope that the mental armor is strong for the Matildas after a round like that, because that could be quite tilting.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That would be very much frustrating for that sort of an awkward situation to be generated out of that. But, look, I suppose that's just one of those sort of one-off situations where this kind of traffic jam happens. I don't think we've seen any of that sort of similar, even looking turnout from even last season, really. So, as it stands, yeah, look, it is what it is really here for Matildas. As long as they are able to at least make do of their Tundra, this is where things could really, take quite the turn. Maybe for the better for them, but in the same vein, for Scorpions now being on a high from winning the Himmelsdorf, they would be feeling quite comfortable in their chairs as well.
I mean, do you reckon that's the case, Jordan? Is it is Scorpions feeling comfortable even playing with a weakened roster here, or is Matilda, again, I think similarly to the Comets, sort of overplayed their hand, committed too much energy too quickly, and they're seemingly burning out?
I mean, I don't know how comfortable you can really be feeling going into this tiebreaker, because to me, it sort of feels like it's a bit of a 50-50 series. Like, some of these rounds have just been like, yes, Matilda's is going to win that. And then the other one's like, I guess Scorpions is going to win that. Like, it doesn't feel super high level to me at the moment. So they sort of feel like a little bit 50-50 kind of games, which makes me feel a little bit awkward going into that tiebreaker. What I will say, I think, is Scorpions probably have got the tiebreaker choice, and that is firm. They had the advantage. They picked defense, which I was also going to say could be an interesting talking point, because Tundra has always been one of those maps where every time we've gone to a tiebreaker, teams have picked defense. But if you actually look at the stats, it's been much more attacking side favored. So
That's true.
I always look at it and I'm like, why do teams pick defense? Because it's supposedly a better attacking sided map, based on the stats. But it has to just be a comfort thing. So, yeah, with that in mind, like, obviously Scorpions should feel a little bit more comfortable because they do get the choice of sides. But I don't think you're too disappointed here if you're Matildas and you're going onto the attack of Tundra.
Yeah, I mean, look, if nothing else, they've seemingly bounced back a little bit. Unfortunately, there's a chance they may not quite escape quite a bit of leaderboard. But Cthulhu, on our screen at the moment, the man who spent the first 2 rounds of this matchup running, trying to keep his wallet out of the hands of the Melbourne Matildas. He's really bounced back on Himmelsdorf. He's not had the greatest of numbers across the board, but I mean, he's there, he's contributing. He is an active part of the Scorpions roster that has pushed it to a decider.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He's been definitely one of the key players to keep on pushing, no matter what the scenario, the result. Yes, the battle win rate doesn't particularly shine, but it is off the back of just some of the more rather unfortunate turnouts. I mean, even just right now, looking at just the general sort of stats between Matildas and Scorpions as it stands in this season 5, Tundra, funnily enough, currently is sitting on a sturdy sort of win rate, 100 win rate for both of them. So right now, going into this one, look, between the mental fortitude of Scorpions, who could be at the moment just feeling rather comfortable, and sort of in general already technically, the veterans in terms of the fact just how long they all stayed together, versus Matildas who keep on still, occasionally shuffling around. Probably money would still be on the Scorpions purely for the fact that Matilda's just been having those sort of few very odd moments where one moment they are going for, decent strats here and there, and then the next one is, well, we don't know what to do, let's just all 5-man push and proceed to lose at least a quarter of our HP amidst that. So yeah, it definitely feels odd, but yeah, look, it is what it is for now. A bit of a saddening sort of turnout for Matildas that they couldn't really close out Himmelsdorf in any shape or form. But in reality, sort of, it would have been more surprising if Scorpions couldn't really pull any sort of comeback or any sort of points out of that one either.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about less conventional play. It's quite evident off that last round, Jordan. It was a hyper-aggressive defense that we were seeing out of the Matildas. It's not every now and then that you see a full 5-man bum rush onto an attacking position go the way it did.
Yeah, bum rush is one way of putting it. I think Unga Bunga was the way that Pilski put it. So for each different host, we have a different terminology for the kind of playstyle that Matildas brings to the table. But they all pretty much get the point across. And it is actually kind of a clash of styles, I think, in this matchup between these two teams. Because Scorpions, they do kind of like to be that slower, a little bit more methodical kind of team. Whereas Matildas are the kind of team that's probably just going to pull out an Unga Bunga bum rush at you. So, I don't know. I don't know how that really plays into Tundra in particular, because I feel like this is actually a map where, like, if you're going to that southern flag, especially, you can kind of just send it on the attack, and I wouldn't really be too surprised to see Sentinels, Matildas, just doing that and catching Scorpions off guard a little bit and potentially winning this series, which would be a pretty big upset in my opinion.
Well, and look, yeah, you got a question in this situation, Cthulhu. I mean, your back's against the wall. I mean, Matildas, they find themselves in a position where they could finally claim themselves a win here this season, whereas Scorpions, they're in a position where, I mean, they go from they were second coming into this evening to potentially losing against the bottom seed as we head into Tundra again. Backs against the wall, both teams, the slate wiped clean. It is now a fresh start. It's just down to this map. Take it away. We'll see what can happen.
Oh, dearie me. Which way is this going to end up, Cthulhu? Obviously, lots to think about, but only about 8 minutes left to do it in. Matildas have gone for pretty reasonable composition. Couple of mediums, few heavy tanks. They're not going for the 2-flag smash attempt. They go to the northern side of the map, which is where Scorpions are setting up.
Looking at Aussie's play so far, a very sort of aggroed push up, he might just be able to catch Whippet a little bit more off guard if he get to spot him, but instead it's actually Aussie just gets spotted without any ability to counter spot here, so that will force him out of the position. But I was just about to say that if there was any sort of spot acquired, and well, finally at the end of it all, Whippet does get spotted, but with no damage, that could have been a good sort of initial momentum to try to drain at least Whippet out of the possibilities of, you know, trying to go for a YOLO push to at least, you know, get the clip in. But none of that really comes around, so it looks like we might be seeing a bit of a, you know, a stalemate sort of play maybe here. But I mean, as it stands, with the, you know, what usually used to be, you know, the 60 TPs, the i7, the 277s, now it's the M454s that replacing them. Do we reckon it's sort of changing anything really here?
I mean, I can't imagine that it really does. Just see Matildas at the moment try to get a bit of bleed damage onto Scorpions. They've been successful with one shot into Night, but beyond that, not really a whole lot to be said so far. You obviously saw that little bit of scary moment for Whippet down in the south there in the bat chat, but now he's kind of got full control of the southern part of the map on his own.
Yeah. Quite curious, actually, setup. Given that what I'm assuming is that Scorpions thought that there would be quite a heavy pressure from Matildas, and, you know, expecting the proverbial Unga Bunga sort of rush towards the B flag, but none of that really arisen from that. So instead, we get to see a bit of a slower game. The one thing that I'm very much curious about and want to see how will it really change the playfield is the highlighted STB of Dark. Dark in general, so far, in the context of this very matchup, has been a very impactful player. So with his sort of assistance, maybe him and Whippet could start getting some chip damage in. Maybe if they get to spot IS-4, maybe they could start forcing it out of the village. Maybe if they spot the CS-63, maybe they could force even further back into the alley. There's a plethora of variations, because at the moment I'm not really seeing a whole lot of progression to be achieved here between, you know, Saxon, Crit, and Mary.
We'll just point out as well that Aussie is back in the lineup for this tiebreaker for Scorpions. So whether that makes a difference or not, leave up to those of you at home to make your decision. Very, very slow game out from Matilda so far on this attack, but they are starting to converge their forces on the southern side of the map. I think that's going to be a bit of an awkward turn of events for them, though, because the 54s are rotating down there for Scorpions as well. And if for some reason Dark and Whippet were to just press the W key right now, they would drive into a massive stack of Scorpions tanks and pretty much just lose the game from there.
I think that's the beautiful spot where they are actually residing. They are preparing for, say, that swing does come around. They could just absolutely bail out because both STB1 and the Bat Chat, first of all, they have a relatively decent sort of camera rating, so they should be able to spot it before they are being spotted, and the mobility should allow them to back out. Raspberry actually already spotted courtesy of one of those 2 medium tanks, and already a little bit of a damage that did come in, but as it stands, I'm a little bit concerned for the positioning of the heavies right now from the Matildas, because they are starting to now consider the push towards the 2 flag, but that is the least necessary and the least needed thing as they actually push towards Raspberry to try to eliminate him.
I don't know about this one from Whippet and Dark. I just feel like this is an accident waiting to happen. JT is the isolated tank, but he's a super conqueror. He's playing hull down. He should be able to get a bit of damage out, but if you lose the two medium tanks here for the Matildas, then you're really going to be in trouble. Let's see what the move is going to be for Scorpions. If they go north, it could be problematic. JT will start to try and get out of dodge. He is able to do so, but in the meanwhile, Raspberry has been collapsed upon. What I thought was going to happen was Scorpions would wrap in on Dark and Whippet from the south rather than send their forces back north, but that is not at all what has occurred, and of course, as a result, Raspberry just goes down for free. Whippet and Dark now have pretty much actually isolated a fight against JT. Ooh. You've got Saxon, Critical, Mary Turnip coming in as well. Good damage from the Scorpions, but I don't think it's enough. I think Matildas walk away with the win from here. They've got a 4-on-3.
Yeah, Dark actually managed to play a perfect game here, really, against the Scorpions in tandem with Whippet. Actually managed to make the STB1 work perfectly here, and the pressure, obviously, from the 3 remaining heavies actually done just the right kind of work. Benny sort of being, for the most of it, isolated. The loader is dead, but the farm, 3,000 damage for Dark, and yeah, it's all basically a GG for Scorpions here.
Certainly looks to be that way. I don't really see Aussie being able to clutch this one out 1 versus 4. Gets that killing blow for the Matildas. It's really a victory lap more than anything else. He's just driving his way around. Both Dark and Aussie firing shots on the move and trying to get as much damage down as possible, but the reality is this is pretty much game over. Aussie rammed in the back there by Dark, and well,
yeah,
there we are, ladies and gentlemen. It is a 3-2 victory for the Matildas tonight over the Scorpions, and well, they look a bit more relieved than anything else, I gotta be honest.
Can you blame them? Honestly, they start off 2-0, and then the comeback, and the decider. But it's Dark and Whippet, the high-risk, high-reward play that I would, look, let's be honest, secured them victory there. If not for that, this could have been a vastly different result.
Very much so, yeah. Look, I definitely was initially a little bit skeptical about that sort of push towards the IS-4 of Raspberry, but yeah, at the end of it all, it actually worked out perfectly with the general sort of distraction, with the fact that JT probably raised the alarm a little bit too early for the whole play to really unravel, and yeah, very nicely done. I mean, I'm gonna be honest, looking at the Matildas prior to this matchup, I was looking towards the players like, Mary, like Crit, like Whippet, Saxon, Dark. Never really gotten into, a whole lot of discussion, but after today, Dark definitely managed to sort of carve out his own path here.
I mean, Jordan, it's something that you only really just touched on partway through the map once it already started. Aussie coming in as a clutch replacement there in the decider map. He did some big work, but unfortunately, I mean, coming in that late, it wasn't enough.
Yeah, I don't really think that was, going to be enough to get them over the line. I think really what ended up needing to be happening was that Scorpions kind of needed to make that 50-50 call to go south or north and make that the correct call, but they ultimately chose wrong and went back up to the north, and as a result of that, took way too long in transition. They thought that the major offensive was going to be on the northern side of the map. They thought JT was the one that was kind of going to be the bait, and they were going to collapse upon all of the tanks that were trying to chase him down, but ultimately it was a bit of a bait and switch actually from Matildas, because they did manage to pull that rotation from Scorpions and, catch a player off on their own, isolated, and yeah, they did very, very well for themselves. It's one of those kind of 50-50 decisions again, kind of like what I was saying for the rest of this series, where Scorpions chooses one thing correctly there, they might win that round. Matildas decides to do something a bit different, they might lose that round. Like, it's really hanging on a knife's edge, even though that ends up being a very close, very one-sided round. I think there's a lot of little things there that could have made a big difference.
And I mean, surely Cthulhu, a lot of relief that the Matildas finally getting themselves a win. Look, you're 4 rounds deep, but if nothing else, yes, it goes to the decider. But walking away with the victory against a team like the Scorpions, yes, the weakened Scorpions. I mean, look, it's got to be relief. Other than that, I couldn't imagine what they're feeling.
Oh, absolutely. A win is a win still, and that is a much needed one to get them reset, sort of from the fact that it was quite an unfortunate sort of streak of losses that been plaguing Matildas this time. They finally do manage to close it all out, whilst it did end up looking sort of scrappy in the mid-game of the whole matchup. At the end of it all, yeah, look, that was a really well-executed Tundra.
Well, we've got a man here for an interview, whether it's licorice or leather. He does it, and he does it well. It's Whip It. Look, mate, 4 rounds. You made us wait, but you finally get the victory on the board. A great map 1, a bit of a shaky map 2. How does it feel to finally get a win on the board here in season 4?
A relief. Like, I think we had it, like, we had parts that were really working in the past few weeks, but we were losing in a few very key areas. I think we went, we were pushing a bit too much. I think this round we took it a bit more slower on at least 4 of the 5 maps, and that sort of paid dividends in the end.
Yeah, look, I mean, I don't know if I necessarily agree with you there after watching what you did on Himmelsdorf, but anyway, we'll call that by the by. Talk me through the clutch scenario, the bat chat, the epic gamer moment. What was the thought process there?
So the team were like, "Oh, you should go around the courtyard," and I was like, "Oh no, I'm just gonna go for this. What's the worst that's gonna happen?" So I drive in, and then I'm like, "Oh, this is going really good." And then I kill the first one. I'm like, "Oh, sweet, we're all good." And then I had 1 shot left to pen, and I just didn't take my time enough. I shot the shoulder plate, which I think is around 250 millimeters, and it should have penned. But it was orange, so just lost an RNG. And then when I was driving away, he rolled 540 with heat. And
oh, was that a heat? Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was heat. It wasn't HE.
Yes. That's rough. That's rough. But look, I mean, going into Tundra, I mean, you guys did end up bringing out, you know, the STB, the bat chat. Look, I'm gonna be honest. I was a little bit skeptical initially when I did see the lineup, but curious about how things would really unravel. At which point did you guys sort of got the read that, you know, JT was all alone, the rest of the tanks sort of rotated, and it was sort of the go time?
Look, I think Tundra's very attacking sided, to be honest. I was really surprised when they chose defense because on defense, it's really hard to defend both caps at the same time. So as soon as you find out where their tanks are, you sort of can exploit that and use the STB and the batch at your medium tanks to take the map control. So as soon as the AMXs were committed so far north, it really gave us options to go south. And I asked Dark to come down. He saw that the CS wasn't there. And then we saw that the IS-4 was by himself. And then JT was obviously also by himself because the AMXs were north. So we sort of picked it apart nice and slowly, and yeah, it worked well.
I mean, look, yeah, it was a hard-fought victory in the end, despite some cheeky shenanigans through the middle. Whip it, mate. We'll let you head off. We'll let you celebrate with the lads, and we look forward to seeing more of you in the coming weeks.
Thank you, boys. Have a good night.
Well, gents, what a way to close out the round here in round 4. We go the full distance. We get the decider. Whip it gets his victory there as well. Look, it was a night of all comers. It seems, Jordan.
Yeah, I mean, look, we sort of had a bit of everything tonight. I really thought after those first 2 games I was going to be on the money for the predictions, but as always, it's impossible to get a perfect prediction week for me. So 2 out of 3 ain't bad, I guess. And I don't know about my fantasy team either, to be honest. I think Aussie playing 1 game might have actually cooked me there because I've got him in my main roster and he's only played 1 round now. And so does he get the prio over one of my subs that played 4? I'm not sure, but if that's going to be the case, I'm really not happy about that. That could be disaster.
I'm sorry, but Cthulhu, all I'm hearing is excuses from the Australians here on the broadcast. The crunch fantasy picks, it would seem, coming through. But I mean, look, we got to see some impressive stuff. I mean, Sentinels were able to overcome the cheese. Matilda's finally getting on the board. I mean, what was the standout moment for you reckon?
Honestly, I'd probably say the standout moment is, well, the Muravanka. Just the whole map as it is definitely has been a big standout. The way how Panthers really handled themselves on both maps, it was genuinely a good sort of confirmation that, you know, if before we were, you know, sort of like 60, 65 sort of percent, you know, confident in them whenever they would be taking any sort of the teams, this one, at least in my eyes, raised the confidence in them way, way more, purely because this time it seems like they starting to nail the maps like Ghost Town, like Prokhorovka. If before it was just the Prokhorovka that we would be talking about them, now it's sort of the extra bit to now start taking into consideration for some of the other teams as well to look into, probably starting to counter. So in terms of the storyline for Panthers, it's a good evolution that they are now expanding even further and building on top of the success that they were able to find back in Season 4.
We just had the confirmation from production. Elfish has actually gone up 2 spots in the fantasy after tonight. Regardless.
Don't even worry about it, mate.
And Cthulhu, you've dropped 8 spots down to 13th. I don't really care, just so long as I'm above Pilsky. That's all that really matters to me. But I mean, look, having faith in the wrong teams, maybe tonight, Cthulhu.
No, definitely, yeah, a bit of an unfortunate turnout. I think the fact that I ended up putting 2 players out of AX onto the fantasy team didn't particularly do me too well. But yeah, look, it is what it is. I mean, still plenty of days to climb back onto the fantasy sort of leaderboard. But look, I'll take my L's here. Obviously, with the fact that it seems that I sort of underestimated in terms of even the predictions, in terms of how Panthers would be able to perform. And same goes for being able to predict whether Matildas would have been able to come over, or rather overcome Scorpions here.
And I mean, Jordan, if you're a Matildas fan, look, they technically did take down Scorpions with Aussie in the roster. So maybe the Matildas fans have a bit of a reason to celebrate and look forward to the coming weeks of what they can bring.
I'm sure the Matildas and the Matildas fans do have a little bit to celebrate, but I'm going to need to see more from them, to be quite honest with you. Like, yeah, it's nice to get a win on the board, but this is a roster that performed much, much better last season in terms of where they were at this point in time in the respective seasons. So while it's nice to get a win, I definitely want to be seeing them back that up with a win next week, probably another couple of wins. I think I probably want to see them get wins for the rest of the round 1 matches, which I believe is just next week. I think week 5 is the last of the round 1 matches. And then, obviously start to look to improve on some of the rematches when we get into round 2 of the round robins. So, yeah, not a great start to Matildas, but I've obviously got a little bit of faith. I think that they can do a bit better than what they did so far. So, things are looking up.
I mean, if you're a Matildas fan, you're hoping to win everything from here on out and don't drop a single round. That'd be the ideal. Unfortunately, that ideal may not match reality, but I mean, again, we carry on with the storyline. Cthulhu Sentinels locked in first place, continue that trend that we expected of them coming into Season 5. I mean, at this point, can anyone touch them?
Look, I still think there could be a few odd sort of upsets here and there, maybe one more in the regular season, but as it stands, yeah, if the Sens continue to, perform how they did, even today, I reckon, yeah, not a whole lot of teams will be able to really put a stop to their crusade here.
And I know Jordan's sitting there, but actually they lost their game already this season. Much like the Sentinels, I think we'd like to forget that. Let's have a look at our results from this evening, of course, and see how things played out here in tonight's matchups. And there you go, 3-1 to the Perth Panthers over the Adelaide Action X, 3-1 from the North Sydney Sentinels over the Cairns Comets. And then the Melbourne Matildas show up when they are needed the most to take down the South Sydney Scorpions 3-2. I mean, Jordan, coming into tonight, looking at our predictions, and would you believe that myself and production, the only ones that had faith, and it locks me in once again, number 1 in the predictions. We take it.
Yeah, look, but I will take 2 out of 3 this week, I think. I'm pretty happy with that one. It just sets me apart from Pilsky, who we all know is absolutely trash and has no idea what he's talking about. So if I was equal to him, I'd really be in trouble. So I'm pretty happy with that. I think I'll take that.
And Cthulhu, an abysmal week from yourself. Only a single correct call. In fact, the only person who went worse than you was our Lords and Saviors Wargaming, unfortunately.
Yeah, Wargaming didn't particularly have, a good time, but hey, at least they're still on an 8-pointer, so it still keeps them in the higher end of the leaderboard. For myself, yeah, look, L plus ratio is, I guess, the only thing for me, really, and at least within this week. I already took an L in the fantasy, took an L in the predictions, but for this case, I'm actually happy that I got given this L, given that with Matildas finally getting on board, it gives them that sort of an extra breathing room, and it's no longer L central for them. They starting to reclimb back up. But yeah, look, maybe I'm not as big brains as I thought I was.
And speaking of big dubs, the Perth Panthers coming up big tonight, jumping from 4th to 2nd, up with the North Sydney Sentinels. Jordan, I mean, if you'd come into the season, come into this round 4, would you have thought that this is where we'd be seeing these teams standing?
No, probably not. I think I would have expected Scorpions to be equal on 9 points alongside Sentinels and Panthers. I mean, aside from that, I guess the results were pretty expected tonight. I mean, Sentinels definitely you expect to beat Comets. Panthers versus Action X was a bit of a toss-up, but I've always had a bit of faith in Panthers, so it's kind of nice to see that starting to get realized. Don't think I would have expected to see them above Scorpions at this point, but I can actually realistically kind of see a world where Panthers does end up being a grand finalist team. Like, I think it is a very good roster, so I'm not too sad about how these tables are starting to sort of shape up. I mean, Matildas have gone up above Comets. I think that makes a lot of sense. So overall, yeah, with the exception maybe of swapping Scorpions and Panthers, like that to me looks like a pretty legit standings right now.
I mean, it sets us up for an exciting few weeks ahead. And speaking of, let's have a look at next week and see what matches we've got waiting for us. Cthulhu, give us the rundown. Which match are you the most excited for here?
Oh.
Yeah, look, I'm looking at the Panthers versus Scorpions, which could be the juicy one, really, at least personally for me. Sentinels versus Matildas, look, I mean, the first the initial thought is that Sentinels should be able to spank Matildas rather well. The Comets versus Action X, though, could be that hidden gem, I reckon, because on the side of Comets, obviously, yeah, they have had a few rather odd sort of turnouts, especially counting in today's one as well. But against Action X, who are coming off from a little bit of a frustrating sort of loss, this one could actually be evening out the sort of the playfield, really. Or at least has the potential for that.
And yourself, Jordan, you reckon we've got any cheeky upsets on the horizon, or is it going to be all things as usual going into next week?
I think Action X definitely should beat Comets. I think Sentinels definitely should beat Matildas. So no for those first 2 matches, and I'm not really sure that I have an opinion on the third match as far as like who goes as a favorite, right? Like, I don't know that there is a world where there's an upset. Like if Panthers win, you're like, yeah, they're actually pretty good. If Scorpions win, you go, yeah, that's pretty good. Like, that's fine. I don't think it's a world where really either of those teams are like in upset territory if they lose. So yeah, no, I guess would be my answer.
Quite clearly, his focus is still only on the fantasy. Results don't matter as long as I'm sitting above everyone else. But I mean,
that's right. Yeah.
I mean, Elfish gained 2 points and finally broke out of the top 10 into top 8. So I suppose that is quite a solid dub.
I mean, look, the real story being that who remembers top 10? Obviously, you win or you lose. That's it. Doesn't matter who else was in the top 10. But I mean, Cthulhu, if you had to put it down to one player tonight that you thought really stepped up and gave us a big showing, was there someone that really caught your eye?
Dark probably is the one that really pops up in my head. He was... I wouldn't full on say that he single-handedly managed to push the envelope there, but courtesy of his plays, of his positioning, he was one of the reasonings where Matildas were able to really solidify their positionings. Obviously, we would have to discard, Himmelsdorf, how things really went there for Matildas in general. But, I mean, you look at Muro, you look at the Tundra, it all was very, very clinical from him.
And Jordan, I'll put it to you in a different way again, leaning into your crutch of the fantasy. Is there a player in particular that you've seen so far that you wish you had picked up for your fantasy roster so far after the 4 weeks?
Yeah, probably not. I mean, I don't know that it's necessarily so much about that. It's just about I just wish my players that I picked performed a little better. It's like I'm actually quite confident in my picks, but sometimes they just let me down. Like, for example, I have Russian and Aussie in my team, and they didn't even play tonight. So it's like,
Aussie played.
What are you supposed to do?
One game and
Aussie
lost.
played one. I did look, and he didn't actually get counted, so that's kind of saved me a little bit. I think it did work out in my favor there. But like, I think if Russian plays, yeah, he's going to get me some points, but he has to play. So it's not so much that. I just want to see them play. I guess maybe, I think Madhouse has not been a bad shout, to be honest, and I haven't really picked him just because I think 5 stars for Madhouse is a bit of a stretch, but, maybe it's something I'll think about in the future. Like, I definitely think he's probably, at the moment, a little bit more consistent than Russian, which is my 5-star. So maybe there is a world where I think to sort of trade that out. I want to answer that last question though. I think we've got a little bit of time. I'm not sure, but I think Returned actually this week was a very, very good player for Sentinels. He had pretty much 4 really, really stellar games. So I'll give him the shout out from me. But yeah, I mean definitely Dark. I'm just actually even looking at the standings for the fantasy this week, and Dark was the top player. Whippet was the second top player. Return was the third top player. So yeah, I think those 3 probably are the ones that really did very well for their respective rosters. But given the fact that Returned was the only player from Sentinels to find himself in the top 5, then yeah, he gets my special shout out.
Well, look, I've got one more talking point I want to bring up before we look to close out the show. The Minotauro. Gentlemen, what are our thoughts? You've seen it a couple of weeks now. Cthulhu, are you liking what it's bringing to the competitive environment?
Yeah, look, it definitely brings in a little bit of a nicer sort of dynamic, the nicer change to the general sort of clay field, and it definitely does sort of. We do get to see it both play in that sort of the classic sort of TD play style, plus being the assault tank. So yeah, look, by all means, I'm very much still keen to see the Minotauro being brought on. What I'm definitely not really looking forward to is versing against it in the general random battles, because that is, well, Pain Town.
And I'll put it to you again as well, John. The Minotauro, I mean, we've seen it a couple of times. We've seen some very good results. We've seen some rather lackluster results. Do you think we see more of it in the future?
Yeah, I think we definitely will. I'm happy with it. I think the way that it's been used has been good. And I mean, that's always the important part. It's not that teams are just picking it because it's the new tank and they think it's OP. I think the way people have played it has been generally quite good, fairly intelligent. So yeah, happy with it.
Well, gentlemen, that does bring us to the end of week 4 here in the ANZ Premier League Season 5 for World of Tanks. Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute blast, despite the Australians on the broadcast. Like we bring them along. Cthulhu, obviously. I mean, I'm not Mac, but doing a lot of carrying here. We make it through the day. Going into next week, though, I mean, we've set up a lot of interesting storylines. We look forward to having you back. Make sure you're back same time next week to kick off all the action. We'll see you then.